my calculations are correct, when this baby hits 88 miles per hour, you're gonna see some serious
It has begun!
Calm down, Doctor. Now is not the time for fear.
Time to misbehave.
Give them nothing, but take from them everything!
Program complete. Enter when ready.
Greetings once again, my friends, and welcome back to another Geek News Roundtable Discussion, where we sit around the table, the round table, so to speak, and we discuss a particular topic, or in this case, I believe this subsection of roundtable discussions is just going to be labeled MMO Talk. I am your host, Adam Mickelson, aka Drak. I hope everybody's having an awesome day or night when you're listening to this. And joining me is my usual cavalcade around this table when we're talking MMOs. First off, we're going to start with Brinton Valli, who joins us fresh off of the main story quest completion of FF14 Dawntrail, and then bouncing right into the pre-patch event for War Within. Brinton, you've been very busy. How are you doing?
Pretty good. It's been a nice, chill summer. Chill in the sense of like relaxed, not like chill in the sense of it's bloody hot.
Uh-huh. No, I'm totally there. And what's gonna make it worse is that next week I'm gonna be going down to St. George, which is like the most southern of Utah you can get, and it's pretty much Arizona down there. So I'm looking forward to 100, 110. Thankfully, we'll be in a nice air-conditioned condo.
Thoughts and prayers.
Nah.
Well, the air conditioning won't break.
Well, no, it actually holds true. I just don't get any say in it because it's my wife's family. So at that point, I'd prefer to have it like 70, and I'll have to deal with the fact that it's probably going to be like 75. So
yeah, it's not better than outside.
That's it's not horrible. And also joining us is Rising Sun. Rising Sun, how has this pre-patch and all of the War Within and maybe even some of the Dawntrail been treating you, my friend?
Well, I've realized that instead of a rectangular table, I now want a round one.
Yes, it is. We have to stay true to the branding here, Rising Sun. We are around a round table that is totally not in a Discord chat. That's not how this goes.
Okay, I'll be right back. I need to go to the furniture store.
So, the first thing that we actually need to get into is I know that some people really wanted to be able to hear thoughts on the main story quest of Dawntrail, but the reality is I think the only person here who's played it is Brinton. And so at that point, I'm kind of wondering if it actually might be a better idea to hold off, because we've already kind of talked about doing this with other expansions of 14. And I kind of wonder if it might be a good idea to hold off on any kind of spoiler-ish talk when it comes to Dawntrail. Do you have like quick thoughts that you want to give for Dawntrail's main story quest?
Me?
Yes.
Well, obviously me. I don't know why I just asked that.
I mean, Rising said could have been playing it. Well, no, he's in the middle of the story somewhere, so he would have had some time.
Yeah.
You're on Shadowbringer still, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, and I haven't played much of that lately, but I can make stuff up if you want me to do that. I'm good at that.
Well, I'll start, and then you can totally just bounce off of me afterwards. So,
cool.
So just some like quick non-spoilery thoughts. These are things that like I've even shared with my spouse, who probably doesn't even really care. But essentially we're coming off of a major saga, a giant story that was told for 10 years, transitioning into another 10 years, a brand new saga that is now just starting as of a month ago. We're coming off of some really high melancholy, high like how do I want to put this? Just like some really intense storytelling, very melancholy, very sad, yet with that sense of hope. And so the shift from ending a major story and transitioning into a new one is always a bit, you go into it apprehensive, especially since a certain storytelling studio, cough cough Marvel, hasn't done a super great job about it. I can definitely say from the second you finish Endwalker and transition into Dawntrail, the vibes, the feeling, the overall storytelling, it is a very dramatic shift, and it oddly works.
Yeah, I've heard comparisons, and I don't know, maybe you can actually determine whether or not it's accurate. But basically, everybody has explained to me that like all of this building up into Endwalker and the end of that was basically like just a long ass build up of basically a really long Saiyan saga is the way that they look at it. And then Dawntrail is basically like the hot spring episode in the anime right after the prime bad guy has been taken out. That's how I've seen a lot of comparisons go.
Sure, and you can totally, I mean, like write that down and save it for once you get to that point yourself, Adam. I would say overall I enjoyed Dawntrail. I'm not going to say it's like a grade A expansion. I
Right.
would definitely put it in like grade B. There's a lot of people that would argue that it's a grade C. However, I don't agree. There are some parts that are a bit slow. However, uh, it makes up for it in the very end. I wish you both had already completed Endwalker so I could say what I want to say next. However, all I will say is this expansion has left me definitely with way more questions about where the next 10 years this game is going to take us. And I'm very excited to see where it goes and what kind of storytelling is going to continue to be told in the next 10 years,
Right.
especially since we're in patch 7.0, especially since patch 8.0 is already being written right now.
Yeah.
And it's not even coming out for another 2 years. So,
which
like I said, I would
kind of make sense because, like, I mean, you had how many expansions? You have Realm Reborn, you have Heaven's Word, you have
Stormblood,
you have
Shadowbringers,
and then Endwalker. So that's
Endwalker.
That's
like a
main story plus 5 expansions worth of the same story, basically
And
playing out.
Technically, a Realm Reborn is considered base game. So Endwalker, Dawntrail is considered expansion 5.
Okay, so but that's what I'm saying is like you have all of these expansions and the base game all going into this core storyline, and now you've finished it. And so at that point you have to kind of regroup everything and try to build more stories upon it. I mean, I feel for FF14 fans because WoW hit this by pretty much the end of the Wrath of the Lich King. So that's 2 expansions. Then at that point, all of the big bads of Warcraft 3 had been taken care of, and that was kind of the initial villains that they could look forward to. And Cataclysm was basically the point where WoW kind of regrouped and said, okay, well now we can pull from older villains, we can pull from, villains that we can create on our own. And so at that point, I do not envy Square Enix in the task of, after having so long, now they have to kind of go, okay, now we're resetting the status quo, now we have to create new threats.
I would argue that those threads were already there, which is why I feel the transition from the conclusion of the last 10 years flows very well into the next 10 years.
Right.
And that's why I said I am left with so many questions of like, okay, that happened. What the fuck am I about to get? Like, what the fuck is about to happen next?
Right.
Like, I don't want to wait 2 years for 8.0 and all of the story that's going to be told between now and 2026. I want to know now.
But I actually like. I'm not saying that that's a bad thing, because I remember having conversations with my older brother. Like, you know, he's kind of the prime reason I joined WoW, because him and me loved the lore from Warcraft 3. And so at that point, like, once we got the Lich King dead, we're just like, what else can you do? And so at that point we were like, okay. And then Cataclysm came along. It's like, okay, Deathwing. I mean, you know, that's still kind of a loose plot thread. Not everybody knows about Deathwing, but okay. But then Mists of Pandaria came along, and we were just like, okay, well, what do you do? What do you do from now, or what do you do from here on? And so we kept on having that question, and you know, the more that we had it, the more I just kind of look at that question and go, it's not necessarily a bad thing story-wise, because this is supposed to be a living, breathing world.
It's like,
yeah.
I think like Pandaria is like the first time like they were building something basically like from the ground up to like add to the story instead of pulling from what had been done before.
Well, because all of the Pandaren lore that they had up until that point was joke stuff. Because the Pandaren were literally invented in the bonus campaign of the Frozen Throne expansion for Warcraft 3. So at that point, like, they wanted to make the Pandaren a serious culture kind of thing. So they wanted to be able to do that, but then they also wanted to build other threats, like you're saying, Rising Sun, where, yes, ultimately you could argue that it was, you know, since Garrosh ended up being the big bad of that expansion, that it was Alliance versus Horde, I guess. But you also got the buildup of Yasharaj, and you got the buildup of the Mogu and the Thunder King, and the Zandalari even got buildup in that.
And even with Garrosh, he was like still new to the story from Wrath of the Lich King. So it's like they had built him up as a character over
he's back from BC.
Okay, that must be it. He's like had a bigger role in Wrath of the Lich King then.
Because BC is where Thrall found Garrosh and brought him to Azeroth.
But even then, it's like, it's a character that's well built. It wasn't back from Warcraft.
Right. Well, and on top of that, Garrosh wasn't known to people, but his dad certainly was. And so at that point, like, unfortunately, with what they did with Garrosh, like, he I would argue, I know that some people will be like, well, he was just as bad as his dad. I would argue he was worse than his dad. And what's worse is that Garrosh didn't learn the lessons his dad did. But that's, you know, it's kind of going into what you're saying, is like, you already had that establishment there, kind of like with Deathwing, but then we could build other things like the Mantid and their attachment to Yasharaj, and then we could also build the Mogu as a potential threat for later, etc. And so I liked a lot of that, but it's one of those things that I've come to applaud with MMO developers, is when they can keep the world or universe growing in that aspect, because a lot of MMOs can't.
And especially like with the remakes, like getting to see the story again, like there's a lot of like interesting new villains created there. My complaint though is like a lot of them just stayed there. It's like, it would be cool if we got like more of the Mogu or the Mantid in later expansions, even if not like a main villain, just like do more of them. Yeah. Instead of just like leaving it there.
I agree with you. And who knows, maybe they have some plans. I mean, we have 2 expansions on the horizon, but yeah. So, any other thoughts that you want to put in for Dawntrail before we bounce into the pre-patch?
Like I said, I would give it a grade B. Mm-hmm. So like 3.5 out of 5 stars. That was my overall impression of just 7.0. And I had a great time.
Cool.
It was fun.
Okay. Now I haven't played 14 as long as you guys have. Do they do like patch content like WoW does, where you have
Yes.
extra islands and stuff like. Okay, so the story's technically not done in Dawntrail yet.
No, I don't know. There's always 5 major content patches
Mhm.
between expansions,
Okay.
and they are 4 months apart. So I don't. So technically,
That's a
the
nice number,
Dawn
though.
Trails. Yeah, it's it. Final Fantasy 14 is very predictable and how expansions work, and
Mhm.
as we get through them, Adam, you'll start to notice. Oh, yeah, this like the familiarity and what to expect is very convenient. Great.
It sounds to me like, just from past discussions, that Square Enix probably found their formula a lot quicker than Blizzard did.
Yes, I would say start like after A Realm Reborn, going into Heavensward is where they, I mean, honestly, right in that first expansion, figured out their formula and
Mhm.
just continued to build upon it between Stormblood through to where we are today.
Yep.
Um, so I don't know how many patches or major content patches it's going to take to like officially complete Dawn Trail story and start transitioning into
Yoshi P will throw
8.0
you a
story.
left hook and give you 6 patch updates.
I will welcome it. Sure.
He's like,
But
I
I
need to
and
change the formula.
but yeah, that's hopefully somebody out there says, yeah, that no spoilers. I mean, I literally said nothing about the story.
Well,
I had
and more
fun.
importantly, one of the things I'm actually looking forward to, because we talked about this in the past, is like, since Rising Sun is like a middle portion into the story, and I'm just barely starting out, it's actually kind of cool to be able to just kind of go through those, and give our thoughts, spoiler free, or not spoiler free, but like spoiler heavy once we get to those points, because that actually can give people something to look forward to with 14.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
we also had the World of Warcraft War Within pre-patch happen, and it was definitely a pre-patch. Let's put it that way. I love the fact that, and I'm sure somebody's going to point out to me, well, this pre-patch went by without a hitch. But to me, every pre-patch towards an expansion has always had its bumps in the road. It's always had little things that have to be fixed. And this one was no different. For those who were very excited about the Warband Bank, you had to basically wait a week until you could get it working. I know a lot of people in my guild were super pissed off at it, especially the richer members of my guild, because they just wanted to unlock all the freaking tabs.
Is it now working? I haven't tried it this week.
From what I've been told by those who are using it, yes. I still haven't unlocked it, so I couldn't tell you. But from what I can tell, what I can glean from my guild chat, it is. And people are already kind of gathering up warbound gear, at least whatever warband bound gear they can get, in order to prep their alts for the War Within. And actually, one of the things that also happened with this was we got a couple of fixes to some of the other systems that were happening. But really quick, like, what was the first thing that you guys were immediately excited to do once that pre-patch was put in place? Like, did you guys immediately go towards the Warband Bank, or did you try out other stuff?
Yeah, I
The
think
bank.
like I went to unlock it because like, oh, let's new feature. Why not unlock it? I feel like the pre-patch like doesn't have anything too exciting for me though.
Not yet, no. Yeah.
And yes, I just confirmed the bank does work.
Yes, the Warband Bank does work, and so does the Warband Bank Inhibitor. Is that what it's called? The remote bank that the little toy that we can get, Brinton.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah, I was playing a little bit before you. Actually, right where I got to like a good stopping point is when you started this call. So I was like, oh, perfect, I
Well,
can
there you go.
stop. But I haven't but I haven't played around with the Warbank since PREPATCH went up.
Yeah, I think the biggest bug was that portable, like, portal or whatever it is, the toy that lets you access the Warband bank, and that was what was creating all the issues, but they fixed that.
Anytime that you activated it and accessed it, it would say, oh, somebody else from your warband is using the bank.
Yes.
And it's like, well, I'm the only, like, unless like the AI of the game just magically...
It was connecting to your guild or something like that instead of just your warband, so it was like expanding it, and it was just a little server error that they had to fix, but they had to track it down first.
Right. It was just funny though, because the error message was, well, somebody else is using it. And I sat there and I'm like, well, unless
somebody's on my account, that isn't me.
Well, yeah, I was like, unless my dragon, which is an AI, took over my account, I can tell you for a fact that the only person accessing this right now is me, myself, and I.
Brinton, were you on the Deathwing mount? Because maybe Deathwing can gain sentience.
You know,
he's the only evil dragon. Well, unless you have like the boss skins with your dragon riding mounts.
You know, Adam, I used to have that mount on my old account, and I am very sad that was one of the mounts I've lost, because I know it was tied to the 15-year anniversary event. So I'm gonna go mourn.
Until November, and then the 20th is gonna happen, and we already know the blue World Breaker's coming back. So you can get that one.
Okay, well,
and I like that one better. I like, nothing against the Obsidian World Breaker, but like then they gave me one that was blue, and I'm like, I like blue better. So
yeah, blue's a good color.
So at that point, you'll be fine.
Cool.
So at that point,
jokes aside, that was the error message. I haven't played around with it yet. I know that there are things on my main I would like to put into that bank, and so knowing that it's ready to like properly be used, I'll probably be moving around some stuff this weekend.
See, for me, it wasn't really the Warband bank that I tried out. Brinton can attest to this, because I was basically giving kind of live feedback as I was doing it. I wanted to test the long advertised system where when we do transmog collection, we would be able to pick up and gain the appearances of things that were outside of our armor class. And so I wanted to make sure that this system was up and running, and I actually took a break from transmog runs until this system was put in place. And I can honestly tell you, I did all of the content that I've basically been able to do, which leads up to Battle for Azeroth content, which I have no idea why they did this, but believe it or not, they buffed the Battle for Azeroth raid content so that it's actually just a tad bit harder, and that was apparently enough for my squished item level, because they've done a little bit of squishing since then, that I was not able to do all of the things that I wanted to do in BFA content, but I was able to do Classic to Legion. And the system seems to be working. It does have some hiccups. There were a couple of items that it wouldn't give me the appearance, but Blizzard has an interesting fix where when you actually run out of inventory space, like I do, if you sell it and you still don't acquire the appearance, it will give you the appearance when you sell it. I thought that was very handy.
That's a clever fix to an issue.
Yes. Because one of the things I found interesting was when I did the classic raids, for those who don't know this, the final bosses didn't just drop epics. So Ragnaros, Cthulhu, and actually Cthulhu might have been the first one where they did nothing but epics, but Ragnaros and Nefarian also dropped blues that were actually very good. They were at least something that you could hand over to somebody who didn't get a whole lot of gear, and they'd still be competent until they could get their tier piece, if that makes sense. Those still did not run under the new system, but that's when I noticed the sell. When I sold some mail boots on my druid, and immediately I got the appearance. So that's a clever fix, to kind of just account for the things that they couldn't account for. So I was appreciative of that. I was also very happy during my transmog run because in most of the expansions that I ran, I got a lot of weapon transmogs that I still hadn't been able to get my hands on. So that was really good.
Yeah. How many characters did you run through that with?
Just one.
Oh, nice.
So I just ran through them with my boomkin. And I think my final tally was I got 8 completed armor sets on various classes. I believe 2 of them were on my druid, 1 was on my shaman, and that one I was happy about because that one I'd been farming for like a year and a half, and that was my shaman's Sunwell set. And I would, you understand this, guys. Like, you get down to that one piece, and that boss will just never drop it. And it dropped on my boomkin, and I'm like, yes, thank God, I don't have to do this again. But I also got a set for my rogue, for my paladin, for my warrior, and I want to say, I think either my DK or my monk got one as well. But yeah, it was very plentiful, thankfully. And for all the people that are sitting there going, well, you weren't able to collect the tiers. Here's the thing. There's actually a lot of pieces in those raids that look like the tiers. That's what Blizzard does, is they make copies of it so that maybe if your tier isn't the greatest thing ever, you at least have a chest item in that raid that you can go get, and it looks like your tier. So that's where a lot of those sets came from, is that, you know, it's just a mail piece, it's not class bound, and I was able to pick it up and it filled the socket. So very happy.
Yeah.
So I can tell you for a fact that system is up and running and it's working just fine. But that's
Great.
pretty much all I did. And the only thing that's irritating to me is they buffed the Battle for Azeroth raid bosses, and we're not talking by much. It was like 2% to their health and their damage, which 2% to something that has like 45 million health is still a lot of extra health. And the fact that you buffed their damage as well, when they might have mechanics that you kind of have to sit there and endure, that creates a problem. So I was irritated at that. The other thing I was irritated about is they still haven't fixed a lot of those BFA raid bosses, where they still have mechanics that require you to have more than one person there. So the perfect example is Mithrax the Unraveler in Uldir. He still has his mind control, so as soon as he MCs you, because you're the only person in the raid, it resets the encounter. So obviously not possible to do that. That and Dazara lore, the opulence encounter or the troll treasure room is still requires that you have at least one person in both hallways to get to the treasure boss before you can fight him. And so they haven't fixed a lot of that shit. That's irritating to me, but I'll get over it. I've still got tons of other sets to go get.
Yeah, and you should get enough like new gear from the expansion, so that will more than make up for it.
Exactly. So I'm not too worried about it. And I mean, I'm not in like the best of gear. I think my druid tank right now might be better off than my boomkin, and that's only by like a couple of points, because he's like barely over 500, and my druid or my boomkin is like 496. And so I did all of that with my boomkin, and I was still successful at 496. So that's LFR gear, guys. That's nothing to shoot a stick at, you know. But yeah, that's pretty much all I did for the pre-patch. Overall, it's a buggy patch. I don't know what else anybody else was expecting. I like the fact that people saw that the hero talents were on the talent screen, but you couldn't access them because they're locked behind 71. So people were complaining about that. There were a couple.
I feel like,
what was that?
Yeah, that one, like, it feels kind of dumb. It's like, yes, these are for like 71 through 80. Why would you expect to get to them now?
Yes.
I guess it might be kind of good, like, see what your options are. But
I think in all honesty, what people wanted was there were still some descriptions of the hero classes that hadn't been put in the beta, and they were hoping that they were filled out for the pre-patch. And I think there's still like a few missing. Like there's a rogue one that's missing. And that's it. So, like, if you really want to get mad about that, then fine. I don't know what to tell you. I think you've got other things to worry about personally, but that's me. But now we can also talk about the the pre-patch event, or the War Within Radiant Echoes event, which did go live this week. Have either of you guys been able to go and try out the Radiant Echoes? We already know Brinton has, but you did the pre-nerf or the pre-buff one, which you didn't like.
Yeah.
Now they've actually buffed it a little bit because people loved it so much. They upped the regular, or the regular activity of it. So now it's not every 90 minutes, it's every 60. So you can do that. And they also buffed the experience that you can get from the Radiant Echoes as well.
It's actually more than just every 60 minutes, because like every time you defeat the final boss, it like does it again.
Mm-hmm.
So it's up all the time.
Pretty much. Because here's the thing, is that if people haven't realized this, the Radiant Echoes, it's great and all to be able to gear your characters, but I think the main focus here was not only is it kind of a legacy event for the 20th anniversary of WoW, but also it is more of a level all your alts, because you're going to be busy in the War Within. And that's what I've seen a lot of people do, is they basically park all their alts and then they run the Radiant Echoes on those alts as much as they possibly can. And for good reason, because I decided to try that out myself. Not only did I max out my Demon Hunter from 65, so 5 levels there, I've worked on my Priest from 52 to 64 at this point. And then I also, just for the hell of it, decided to go dig out my Rogue, which is technically the least known class by me. And he was sitting at 45 after the squish. And I got him up to about 53 from 45. So, yeah, there'd be a butt ton of experience is what I'm telling you guys. Like, each time I did a Radiant Echo in, like, Dragon Blight or whatever, I was getting about 3 levels each, honestly. And it was kind of staggering to me. That's a lot of XP to be able to get from just such a small event.
I think I know how I'll approach leveling my last 2 alts for the next couple of weeks.
The only thing I don't recommend you do is don't do Dust Wallow Marsh. Because that's the Radiant Echo of Onyxia, and they decided to add the whelps into that encounter. And so once a batch of eggs has spawned and the whelps are out, it is lag city. Such lag in that area, and Onyxia is such a slog to try and kill when you have like 20, 25 whelps out that everybody else is trying to AoE down. So if you can spare yourself, don't. Because here's the thing, the Lich King and Ragnaros are nowhere near as bad as this. Don't do Dustwallow Marsh because of the final encounter with Onyxia. There's just too much. I hate to go into the meme video, but there's too many whelps. Hard delete.
Your computer can't handle that many.
No, nobody can. And that's why that's a 50 DKP minus, Rising Sun. Am I the only one that's actually seen that video? Good God.
I think I saw it a while back. It's been
odd groups got left, even groups got right. Yep. And what's funny is I got reminded of that while doing Rasagath for the first time.
Yes, Rasagath is fun.
You know what? I saw people bitching and moaning in the guild chat when I did Rasagath for the first time for questing with Drak videos. I love Rasagath. Rasagath was a chaos. And you know what? That's what I expect from a final boss. I'm totally okay with it. Do I expect that from every final boss? No. Not that level of chaos, but it was refreshing. I'll say that.
It was very fitting of a patch boss. Are you leaving expansion boss? The Firewreck also had a lot going on.
Firewreck had a lot of stuff going on. Starkareth was way more tame than either of those two, but what he didn't have in absolute chaos in the fight, he made up for with all of the cool magic effects that were going on in that fucking fight, man. That was amazing.
I feel like it was like less chaos, but more if you mess up, you're going to kill someone.
Oh no, yeah. There was a lot more of the, if you mess up, you will die. And that will be nobody's fault but your own. And then you get to sit there for the rest of the encounter while everybody else does it right, which was fine because I only, like, my first time around, I died at like 10%. So at that point, I didn't even know this until I got into that encounter, but he slowly changes into like this void horror as the fight progresses. Like, I knew he would start having like weird voidy veins and stuff like that on his model, but I didn't know that he like devolves into this void abomination. And so I just sat there for 10% going, what the fuck happened to you, dude?
Yeah, I was too distracted trying not to die to notice that.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, he looked amazing. And you mentioned Fireack, but Fireack is, yes, it's a chaotic fight, but I kind of embrace it in the fact that it's chaotic, but it's very much, what's the word I'm looking for? Not predictable, but it's chaotic, but it's doable, as opposed to Razageth, where a lot of things can go against you if you're not paying attention, kind of thing. Especially since she's a big fucking wind storm dragon and can blow you off the damn platform.
This has happened to me many times.
Dude, like the first LFR I did of Razageth, first time, or first pull that we did, and we're boring the crap out of Brinton, but that's okay. The first
you're good.
The first hurricane wing took 10 people because they fell off the platform, and nobody knew to stand in the storm zone, and then we lost another 10 to the lightning breath that Razageth did.
Oh yeah.
Because nobody was paying attention to Razageth's mouth. Funniest things you don't pay attention to in a dragon fight. Their mouth. And their mouth is just as dangerous.
If not more so.
And we had people who were just like, man, if you did this in classic, Nefarian would have owned your ass. And it's like, yeah, that's true. Because he literally had a class call mechanic where he would, and this was actually added when Death Knights were added into the game, where he would death grip all of you right in front of his face, and then he would deep breath you. Why? Because fuck you, that's why.
Because he can.
Uh-huh. And people wanted Deathwing to be the version 2.0 of that fight. Believe it or not. So yeah, the Radiant Echoes happened. I actually, like, do either of you guys see the Radiant Echoes as a bad thing for what they're trying to do here?
I feel like it's not bad. It's
No.
also like not really remarkable though.
It's not. It really isn't. I mean, the perfect example is, since we're building into the War Within, we could have easily done like what we did with Legion, where we had like weekly quests that would unlock that would kind of catch everybody up. But this was just, to me, this is the way I've described it. You guys can tell me if I'm wrong. This is the 20th anniversary event a couple of months early. That's what it feels like.
Yeah, I wish they could like tie in like there's like the whispers and the Radiant Echoes, like show more about like what people are seeing, how they're impacted by it, other than just like go kill these things. That's just like,
and
it's something to do.
I tend to like pre-launch events that continue the story. I mean, like the perfect example is what they did with Legion, and then the war. What's it called? The War of the Roses. The burning of Teldrassil for Battle for Azeroth. Stuff like that is a lot cooler to me than just like, oh, the world is having a zombie invasion. Oh no. I like world building and storytelling is what I'm saying.
Yeah, because Battle for Azeroth, like they had a ton of story go before the expansion. Well, this like they've had a little bit, but it's not really adding to anything we've seen before, except for a little bit with Magni, which okay, that's something.
Yeah. Brinton, you remember that, right?
Yeah,
it's like every week we got like a phase of the story, and it went over like
I did Legion's pre-patch. I did BFA's pre-patch.
Right.
Yeah,
because I showed you the Legion cinematic, and yeah, you went right into Legion at that point.
Yeah, shortly after with my ex-husband.
Yeah.
Did Shadowlands have a pre-patch?
Not
Yeah,
really. Or
it did. It had the like zombies things in Northrend.
That's right. They recycled the Lich King event.
All I know is I didn't do Shadowlands. I didn't do Dragonflights.
Yeah.
And now here I am doing the War Within.
What was Dragonflight's pre-patch
I
event?
don't remember if there was one.
I think the focus that they did was the time skip, and that was pretty much it. Like, you had little dialogue stuff that you could get for some of the characters. Like, I think they did something with Torelli and Illyria. But like the biggest allure out of that was they really wanted people to go and make a Drak Theer. And so that was kind of the lead up, as opposed to Legion, where like the first week was unlocking the Demon Hunter starting zone, and then they continued the story from there. So
I remember that. I mean, I know Battle for Azeroth wasn't a great expansion. I enjoyed it because I'm a sucker for like war stories,
Right.
And back then I was very like, yeah, for the Horde, we're gonna beat the Alliance. Bah!
Yes.
Just dumb as fuck me.
I remember having these discussions with you, but I'm like, hey, we got Void Elves. I don't care.
Yeah,
that was literally my justification the whole time. I was like, hey, we got Void Elves. I don't care.
And I liked the storytelling in Battle for Azeroth's pre-patch because it made sense why everything led up to the initial story of BFA.
Right.
And then later on, it making sense with the story of Shadowlands. And although I never finished Shadowlands, just getting a like story recap cliff note version from you, Adam, it was enough for me to sit back as I was returning to the game and be like, yeah, one, I'm switching alliance despite my ex-husband, and two, regardless of the atonement Sylvanas is doing in the Shadowlands, I don't really love the fact that she essentially committed genocide to support an evil entity from beyond the realm of living, and then later on realized, oh, I've been manipulated. It's like, okay, yeah.
Good God, there were just so many things Shadowlands did wrong. That just
I just kind of took a step back, and it's like, you know what? I like Sylvanas ruined a Horde for me. And
which is funny because she's like 80% of the reason people went to the Horde in the first place.
And she's 90% of the reason why I left.
Yes. And actually, funniest thing, she's probably 90% of why a lot of people left Horde. So
I get that at the end of the day, it's like, you know, the people who are still like the main story characters who are part of the Horde, I don't fault them. I don't blame them. They were all blindsided and manipulated by Sylvanas as well. But it's kind of that age-old principle of it just takes one person to ruin it for everybody else.
Yeah.
And Sylvanas is that one person, and I can't really continue to stand by it's so funny I'm saying this is all fiction. I can't stand behind a governing body / like kingdom that praised and stood behind a leader who willingly committed genocide just so she could turn around and stab multiple, if not dozens of people in the back.
But it was totally not her fault. The jailer made her do it.
I don't care.
Yeah.
Not to say that like humans and the Alliance are any better. Like,
no, but that's one of the things that makes both factions cool. Is like they're not like one is not higher than the other. They're, for lack of a better term, they're all human. They all feel like they could be somebody we could meet at a bar, kind of thing. and they've all made mistakes, and they've all learned from those mistakes or haven't learned from them. So they feel like real characters. And what's
And
sad
from
about what's sad about Shadowlands is a lot of decisions basically got robbed from those characters for the sake of creating a new villain that nobody liked and nobody wanted to get behind. And as far as I know, even though I know that some of the lore is still kind of going in that direction, they've pretty much abandoned Zoval the Jailer, and for good reason. But I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Rising Sun, but like Shadowlands did just a bunch of things wrong story-wise.
Yeah, it's like they had a decent enough setup, but then after that, it's like there was no story to be interested in.
Right.
Like they had the whole thing with like possessing Anduin, but it's like he was never in control. So it's like, well, why does him doing any of this stuff matter? They're tying into that some now with like he feels guilt over it. And yes, I get that it's traumatizing that I did all that, but logically speaking, none of that is his fault. So there's no reason he should feel bad.
Well, and what makes it even worse is that they basically tried to... I think I explained this roughly to you, Brinton, and if I screw it up, then I'll answer questions. But what they basically tried to do was say that, you know, even though we've dealt with these big nasties like the Burning Legion and the Old Gods, and we, you know, it looks like we're going to take down the Void. Oh, but the Jailer was totally worse than all of them. He's been manipulating events since way back in Warcraft 3, except you can easily justify that he didn't do that. And all the stuff that they tried to do to establish the Jailer as this really big threat all basically stood on the edge of a knife. It could go either way, and it wouldn't work.
And also, if he was like such a great villain and manipulator, it felt like he was still easy to defeat. Like he got a couple victories, but then in like Sepulchre, it was like, well, we beat him. What was his good plan? Why do you think you'd win? Like, was he strong or smart or anything?
Yep. And then when we killed him, he basically went, "Oh, but you shouldn't have killed me because I was trying to save you all from whatever he was trying to save us from." That, I mean, that was just as vague as he was. So at that point, like, yeah, it's one of the things that I'm kind of glad in a way that the writing team has basically kind of tried to distance themselves from the Jailer, but and distance themselves from the Shadowlands in some cases. But they still also do have some lore that kind of connects it, and it's like, no, just make this like WoD, just disown it.
Yeah, it's like they try to distance it as much as they can, but there's like a couple pieces like they set up in there that they can't disregard, like with Anduin, and like we go back to Ardenweald sometimes, like, well, there's those things.
Yep. Yeah, there are little things here and there, but I've also heard in the Warcraft, what are they called? The archives, the big art books that they're putting out.
Oh, yeah, that.
They also kind of still confirm that, you know, like Shadowlands is probably still canon, which I don't agree with in the slightest. I think that they should distance themselves from it because that, I mean, there's a reason that a lot of people call Shadowlands like the killer of all of their favorite characters, because Shadowlands did destroy a lot of characters, a lot of very well-established characters, so much so that the only way the writers could walk themselves out of it is to do a time skip. Because that's all they did for Dragonflight. They went, ooh, poof, 10 years has gone by, like nothing. And, oh yeah, by the way, the Dragon Isles are available.
Yeah, like pay attention to this thing instead.
Yes, and so at that point, but yeah, so like as far as other pre-patch events, kind of bringing things back, the Radiant Echoes, I mean, it's great for leveling alts. I will give it that credit, and also if you want to get some catch-up gear, you can do that. I think there's even some there's mounts. There's Radiant Echo versions of the Griffin and the Wind Rider.
I'm currently working on getting the Griffin.
Yes. So is Andrea when she gets around to it. She doesn't realize this is a limited time event, even though I've told her. So at that
she'll learn the hard way, man.
It's not the first time. It's not the first time. But hey, it's her 15
Oh,
bucks,
shoot.
you know? It's
Yeah,
she spends it.
that's fair. Yeah.
So at that point, I mean, it's cool. I'll give it credit. It's just not what I was kind of expecting, especially considering that, you know, we're gonna go into the World Soul Saga. It would have been cool to have some pre-patch events or pre-launch events that set the stakes for what we can expect. Like, it would have been cool to have an event, and who knows, maybe there is. Maybe they've internally tested it and we don't know anything. Maybe there's an internal event where Anduin shows up in Stormwind. I kind of doubt he'll show up in Stormwind, but like he shows up, he's like, okay, yeah, this Harbinger stuff's going on. And for all the people that want to say like, well, they did the Dark Heart, you could have expanded a little bit more than just that.
Or like tell Anduin's story as part of it too, that we like saw earlier. Is like, well, how does Anduin react to it? Like, can we like fight with him against people or something?
Something to that extent, but it just kind of hasn't happened just yet. So moving on into what we've actually talked about with the pre-patch, let's actually talk the future, shall we? Because we actually might know, again, this is based off of a leak, so we don't know how trustworthy it is, but we might know where we're going for the patches for the War Within. And they're interesting picks, I'll say that much. But let's get into it, shall we? So new icons from the beta have offered potential hints as to where we might be going. And the icons in question tease that we might be visiting, first of all, the Goblin capital city of Undermine. Now, for all the people that are sitting there going, well, we technically visited the capital. No, we actually haven't. We visited Kazan, the island where Undermine was. Supposedly, it's supposed to be under the underground. But we've never visited Undermine. And that's actually been a highly anticipated location since Cataclysm that people have wanted to go to. They want the Goblin lore because they want to be able to see the conflicts between the various factions within the Goblin society, specifically how the Bilgewater cartel, which is the Horde goblins, interact with companies like the Venture Company or the Steamweedle cartel, which are the other big ones in Undermine. And so supposedly, because of the fact that we're exploring Kazalgar, maybe this will actually put us closer to Kazan, and thus we can go to the Goblin capital of Undermine. First of all, thoughts on that? Is this a place that you want to go?
I guess for me, like, I don't really care about the goblins, so not necessarily. But actually,
you didn't care about Grand Theft Warcraft?
Yeah, not really.
That's basically what it was.
And
go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. So I was gonna say, is like, I don't really care about goblins, like, so exploring it doesn't interest me. But the act of exploring it and seeing more about the different parts of it and the different factions, that might make it more interesting,
right?
And it might be a way to like flesh out the story more in a way they really haven't, like since goblins first came out.
And here's the thing: is unfortunately, because we don't have a roadmap for how these patches are supposed to go, people are assuming that Undermine would be the next place that we go, and there's good reason for that. I'm not knocking people for it. But the main reason being is that we will probably be able to use Undermine as like another capital city, where in reality what might happen is, if I'm guessing proper, this is probably going to be the Zarelek Caverns patch for War Within, and thus Undermine might actually become, I know people are going to hate me for saying this, it might become the mega dungeon of this expansion. So basically, Undermine will become the next Tazavesh.
Huh. That could be an interesting way to do it.
It could be.
Yeah, especially like with the mega dungeons, they tend to be like sort of a side story or like another branch of the story. Because like if we're doing War Within, we're going to like underground, the Nerubians and Zalateth and all those things. Goblins seem like completely different from that, but that could also be a good way. It's like, okay, we want to tell their story here, give them some focus separate from it all, and then like link it back later on, maybe.
What I would be more interested in is Gallywix pointed this out early on in Battle for Azeroth. That, like, if people remember the cutscene where he shows his walking stick to Sylvanas, and it's made of azurite. Like, he never knew until recent events, and then it started glowing. And one of the reasons we know this is because one of his teams, like, they were too greedy, and they dug too deep in the mines surrounding Kazan, and that's how he ended up with it. It would be interesting to be able to see, like, maybe the goblins of Kazan accidentally work their way into, oh crap, what's it called? The core way, I think is what it's called. That's how we're supposed to be traveling to the various zones, is that there's like this old pathway that you can fly down into. I think it's called the core way. And so maybe they accidentally dug their way into the core way, and that's how we get there? I don't know. But it's definitely interesting for speculation. Brinton, how do you feel about going to visit the goblins in their capital city?
I mean, what I'm curious about is just how it relates to what we're like initially doing. Like what does that transition look like? That's what I'm curious about.
Now, that would also presume that there would be a raid, because the way that Dragonflight did it was the mega dungeon technically happened after Aberrus. So, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Undermine isn't the way to do it, and Undermine becomes the raid. I don't know, but it's definitely one way to go. But I don't know if we're going to like get it as a neutral capital city that we can visit from there on in. I think it's called Durnagal. I think Durnagal is going to be that for the rest of the expansion.
Yeah,
so,
I don't think they've ever done like a second capital like partway through an expansion. I'm not saying they couldn't in the future,
right? But
I feel like goblins are like too far off of the expansion theme to make that another capital.
Right, and so at that point, I don't think it would work. Plus, I mean, we've heard very little about Undermine. I actually think it might be a better thing to basically treat it as overrun by something, and thus we have to go and liberate Undermine, and that would offer the opportunity for more storytelling in the future. That's me, but that's kind of the way that I think that they could go. But that's one of them. The other one is a lot more interesting, and it would definitely make sense if it was the end major patch for the War Within. And that is, we have some mysterious ethereal icons that are showing up that might be teasing at the fact, along with the Dark Heart cinematic, that we might be going to the shattered world of Koresh. For those who don't know what Koresh is, let me put on my lore glasses for you. Koresh.
Thank you.
Koresh is the former world of the Ethereals. Do you know who the Ethereals are, Brinton?
No.
Okay, you remember Locust Walker?
Yes. Never mind. I'm good. Keep going.
He is part of that race. But we originally discovered them in the Burning Crusade, where we actually found out about the fate of their world, which seems to be kind of going on the same crash course as ours, except they didn't listen. And they actually tried to summon in the Void Lord Demencius, the All-Devouring, and shattered Koresh in the process. Now, for all the people that are saying, but Drak, we killed Demencius in Burning Crusade, he was a group quest. Did we really? Do you kill a Void Lord that easily?
Yes.
No. But then again, I also get yelled at because I still think the old gods are alive. But that's me. So the premise here is that we will be going to whatever is left of their home world of Koresh, and maybe even the raid might have us taking on not necessarily a fully powered, but maybe more powered version of Dimensius in this. So we would actually be facing our first Void Lord, which would be interesting considering that given the tech of the Burning Crusade, all they could do with Dimensius was make him look like a really big Void Walker. So tech has gotten quite a bit better since then, I would say.
Yeah, and I think they have a lot better idea like how the Void Lords fit in everything else.
Yes.
Well, in Burning Crusade, like even for a while after that, it felt like, oh, okay, Void, bad guys, without a bunch of thought put into it.
Right. And I don't know how this would necessarily end, because here's the thing. This has to lead, we know the next 2 other expansions, so this has to lead into Midnight, which supposedly is going to be when the Void officially strike Azeroth. So, is it because we killed Dimensius? Or because we incurred his wrath and thus the wrath of the Void Lords? I don't know. But Koresh is an interesting place to go, just because it can allow us much more storytelling for the Void Lords, which we really haven't had too much of. The most that we have is, what we got in Burning Crusade, plus we know that the Old Gods are creations of the Void Lords. So that's about all we know. Brinton, how would you feel about going to yet another shattered planet to go fight some Void Lords?
And
no, boys and girls, Argus doesn't count. Argus was still a planet at that point.
It looks like, because I actually have been thinking about, okay, what's going on? What's happening next? It seems like there is a lot to do, and there is a story that needs to be told about the Titans, the Void, the Old Gods. I feel like it would make sense with what little lore I understand, and just the sheer fact that Xal'atath is like in not necessarily the background, and I don't want to necessarily say like the big bad of the World Soul Saga, but there's definitely a lot to what's about to come in the next 6 years.
Although
that we
you just
really still
reminded
don't know.
me, we did learn another interesting snippet over the last couple of weeks. Some of the Blizzard devs have been pointing out that Xal'atath is actually not just the Harbinger, she is the Harbinger of Dimensius. So basically saying she officially, technically works for him.
Well, I think Lotus Walker or
Locust Walker.
Yeah. I think he was saying that she was the same one who like brought Dimensius into their world.
He thinks she is.
Okay, maybe it's speculation, but still, like, there's definitely that connection, which.
But it would go into what we know, which is Xal'atath has taken many forms. So at that point, maybe he doesn't know this one, but he's familiar with what Xal'atath has done.
Yeah, which makes you wonder, like, what is the timeline? Because, like, she was in that sword for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
So how does that, like, how long ago was Dimensius released into their world? Yeah, I just don't know how that fits
Somewhere
together.
Between 16,000 years, give or take.
Yes, I guess
I'm not kidding. No. The nerds have actually done the math. 16,000 years.
All right. I've done more math than I have about this.
Well, I mean, thankfully, some of the math is easy to do. But
one thing that I keep replaying in my head and keep thinking about, because I mean, Adam, you told me, oh my gosh, they announced 3 new expansions called and it's the World Soul Saga, blah blah blah. And then I watched the cinematic reveal, and I keep thinking about what Thrall said to Anduin in Sicilith. If that's how, I forgot what the zone was called. I think that's
just call it Silly Tits, like my guildmaster used to.
Great. And they're looking at Sargeras' sword, and he's like, he was aiming that at. He was like, what that was being aimed at was intentional. Like, that was intentional. And Azeroth
Oh,
is
you're
calling.
talking about Sargeras with the sword?
Yeah,
Okay.
like when he shoved it into the planet.
That's been a lot of
Thrall-
speculation, because I guess a lot of people have stated that he wasn't too far away from the Coreway when he stabbed the planet. So I don't
and the fact
I don't
and the
know, but
fact that, and I mean, like, the whole trailer was like Anduin having, like, listening to the whatever, like, the echoes,
yeah, they're
the
being
the
called
visions.
the Radiant Song.
There we go. That's what I was struggling to remember. The Radiant Song, and then Thrall, and then at the very end, Thrall's like, you know, that was a very, like, Sargeras was targeting something very intentional, and that's what sold me, because I felt like, okay, I really enjoyed Legion. I played through all the patches of Legion. I mean, I played all the way through Battle for Azeroth before I was over it and my ex-husband.
Sure.
And I really enjoyed Legion, and so I felt like the World Soul Saga was going, like, it feels like to me, and this is just my own personal opinion, I feel like The War Within is more of like a sequel to Legion, and kind of going back to, hey, there is still story here, and we're gonna address this,
Yeah,
because this
Legion
is
Battle
a
for
problem.
Azeroth, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's why I'm super stoked. I mean, I upgraded to the highest package
Oh, so you
on
get to
my
play earlier than
pre-order.
me. And Rising
Well,
Sun, by the way.
well, if
I still
I
haven't bought the expansion, so
well, if I don't, then I'm not going to be able to fully enjoy the expansion, since it fully releases on the day I start another
Oh, that's true.
semester of grad school.
I didn't think about
oh
that.
no.
Yeah. Oh,
So it
shit.
was just $20 extra, and I said that's worth it for me. And the weekend before I start school, I can play through the expansion and not feel
That's probably
like
for the
I'm
best for you, because then at that point, like, I know that eventually we're gonna sit down and we're gonna talk about the War Within story. So at that point, you at least get a little bit of a head start and get to experience some of that before having to go right back into master's degree.
yeah. But like I told you, Adam, like I told you and I promised you that I was going to come back and play with you, and I want to see what happens.
Uh-huh.
Like, this is like we have at least 5+ years of content coming our way.
Yeah.
I want to see what this saga is. I want to see what the story that's going to be told. I want to see what's going to happen next. And I'm happy to say that this is because I want to do it, and not because I'm just trailing behind my ex-husband who's forcing me to do something that
Right.
I don't want to do, because I don't want to make him mad. And I am like, I'm happy that I'm doing this for myself and enjoying the game as I want to enjoy it.
Mhm.
So yeah, I I've just been keeping that very last thing that Thrall has said to Anduin in mind, because there I feel like we're about to get some.
Are you talking
I
about the
mean,
War
more.
Within cinematic?
Yes.
Okay. I was like trying to think of, like, and it's been forever since I've seen that cinematic, because it actually,
Well,
like, it irritates me a
did.
little bit, but I couldn't remember which one you were talking about.
No, you're good, man. I just feel like I don't consider myself a hardcore Warcraft fan.
Yeah.
I'm a fan, but not hardcore to the same level as some people. And I feel that a lot of the story and lore and things that are going to be shown is really going to excite and expound upon the last 20 years.
Mm-hmm. Well, and what
So,
actually makes me excited about that is because we actually got the confirmation that Chris Metzen, who has been the lore smith for a lot of Warcraft since way back in, Warcraft 1, he was originally going to be an advisor on the World Soul Saga. He's actually officially part of the writing team now. And I think that's appropriate, considering that this is supposed to be basically tying up a lot of the plot threads that he himself created way back when. And so at that point, like, we get to see overall his vision and how he wants to kind of end things before he probably passes the torch to the new writing team and lets them kind of do their thing. So
I think that's incredibly appropriate. If there's still story that specifically he wrote and needs to be told by him, and then before he, as you said, passes the torch and says, "I've told Warcraft story, and it's free for you guys to continue however you want." Cool. I'm all here for it, and we'll see if I keep playing after the Last Titan.
There you go. So kind of back into all of this. There are two other things that I kind of want to mention when it comes to the ethereals, because the rumor mill went abuzz with both of these announcements, both for goblins as well as ethereals. And one of the biggest things that happened with ethereals is that not only would we get Koresh and we'd be able to explore the area and be able to learn the lore of that race, but supposedly we have a hinting that there's a possibility ethereals might become an allied race shortly after the Koresh patch. But it's very loosely based. I need to stress that for a second. It's very loosely based, but basically that the ethereals would become a neutral allied faction, and you would, much like how the Earthen work, you would pick if they are Alliance or Horde, and thus you would be able to create your own ethereal, which is another thing that has been heavily requested for a long time. So, thoughts on, like, do you guys want to create your own ethereal?
Sure.
I would need to see what they look like first.
Right. So the ethereals are basically the bandage people, like Locust Walker.
I don't think that's my thing, but I would like to see. I would like to see what customization looks like.
I mean, I can put up, like, let's see if this will actually work.
I'm Googling for myself as well.
There we go. So this
you.
is the example that the article provides. This is what an ethereal looks like.
That's not as bad as I thought.
It's magic bandages, Brinton. It's okay. It's basically only meant to keep their form intact because they are pretty much purely magic. So
I mean, they just remind me about the undead, and that's probably my least favorite race in the entire game because they just look gross.
Well, and more importantly, I believe they kind of share the same skeleton. So at that point, it's an appropriate comparison.
Thank you.
Rising said, how would you feel about making an ethereal?
I might make one. I don't know if I go out of my way to play it though.
Yeah, I mean, it might be interesting. It just depends on the class selection that they have. More importantly, if we're going to get a new hero class, would it be, my question would be, would it be tied to the ethereals? Because that actually might be a cool gimmick, much like they did with the Drak. I don't know how well it'll hold, but it's definitely one thing to maybe look forward to at the end of this. The other thing I should point out, and this is another loose thread, so there's not a whole lot that we can go off of, but one of the items that leaked from this might be teasing who is leading the charge into midnight. And, you mentioned old friends, Brinton, and you mentioned how this was a sequel to Legion, and then I corrected you and said that it might also be connected to Battle for Azeroth.
I'm listening.
Because it looks like it might be hinting that the next wave in Midnight will be brought by the Queen of the Highborn herself, Queen Azshara.
Interesting. She's making a comeback.
Well, technically she didn't die, because remember, N'Zoth brought her back.
I do remember that.
But
I played through quite a bit of BFA as well. I liked BFA. I know not everybody did.
No, there's some good stuff there. Even I'll admit that.
I may have liked it a little bit too much. My ex-husband made fun of me, but it's fine. I don't really give a shit.
But in the Ny'alotha raid, Because remember, when N'Zoth resurrected her, he pulled her away. He pulled her into Ny'alotha, and she basically teases that she's done working for him and uses the Xal'atath dagger to rip open a void tear, to where she says that she's got bigger fish to fry. She's got more powerful artifacts to go claim for herself and make herself super powerful. So that's the premise that, along with the item, they're teasing that Queen Azshara would be leading the Void Assault on Azeroth, specifically against Quel'Thalas, which is appropriate as a target, considering that the High Elves are basically former Night Elves, former Highborn, that should be her loyal subjects.
That's right.
So at that point, how do we feel about, okay, so Xal'atath might not necessarily be the big bad by the end of this, and instead we'll be looking at Azshara again.
Well, I feel like Xal'atath won't be like the final big bad. I think having Azshara come back from Midnight would make a lot of sense, because like they sent her off into the void. She's a really big character. They want to tie up a lot of loose plot threads. So I think like bringing her back.
And a lot of people feel like the Eternal Palace in Ny'alotha just wasn't, plus the Nashatar zone, just wasn't enough story for her, considering how hyped she had been up until that point. And I tend to agree.
Yeah, because those were both like kind of mediocre zones and raids.
Yes.
Like for that central of a character is like be like the final boss of it all. Like, well, what did she really do up to that point? So
Plus, the other thing to look into with Azshara, which in my opinion is what makes her a great villain, is her and Illidan are very much alike in a lot of ways in their pursuits of power. The only difference is Illidan had a goal in mind when he was doing a lot of the things that he was doing. Whether we agreed with it or not, he had a goal. There was a method to the madness. With Azshara, she doesn't really have that set goal. She's been handed most of the stuff that she has. She's basically the equivalent of a night elf who's born with an extreme amount of talent and thus never really had to work for anything, and thus basically kind of building up a Frieza kind of situation. It's a bad comparison, but it's kind of what I'm going for, because when she says, I'm going to go look for more power, that's kind of like when Frieza became Golden Frieza, and you're just like, oh, well, this is what happens when Frieza trains, is that he can reach new levels of power. Azshara is kind of the same thing. What happens when she actually tries to go and do what Illidan did, which was look for more power, except her goal is domination, not freedom in Illidan's case, which I love, because that's like, Azshara is kind of an ultimate villain that I feel got shackled by the old gods in the end. Like they really weren't able to do as much with her as they wanted to, but now that she's not shackled anymore, she can become a really great villain.
And if they have like void focus and she's aligned with the void, like the void
and
directly.
The void are technically the bosses of the old gods. Yeah, it's a lot better setup. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I would agree. It makes the next, like, part 2 of the saga Midnight, and just like the colors that's used for the logo, it makes like a void focused expansion make a lot of sense. While all this like theory crafting and rumor milling and like speculation we're doing right now is screaming to me that part 1 of this saga is we're trying, like, we go into the earth, we're trying to prevent something from happening that's Xal'atath related, and we may possibly fail. And then ushers in Midnight, whatever that means related to the void. And
well, the whole premise is like, oh no, we effed up and now the void is coming for us, kind of thing. And I love it.
And how are the Titans involved with it? Thinking to part 3. Because just kind of thinking on Dragonflight's story in Dragonflight's expansion, there is a lot of animosity towards the Titans. And as I've been watching some lore videos, the Titans get brought up a lot.
They
And
do.
so it kind of has been putting a bunch of like green flags into my brain of there's more to the Titans that I clearly don't know, and there may be more to the Titans that hardcore Warcraft fans may not really know all that much as well, which is why I have okay, perfect. So that's why I said there may be something that is going to be so mind blown by the end of the next 5+ years that really may just make the last, that makes this next 20 to 25 years of Warcraft that much more special.
Right. And I tend to agree with you on that because it's not just, the lore videos are basically going into the concept that they've changed little bits here and there of the lore in the chronicles. That's what they're called, the books. Basically kind of putting and even in Dragonflight, they did this, where they put the Titans focus more towards order than actually being benevolent gods. And that's not necessarily a bad thing because, like, everything that they have done up until this point, it makes sense in the concept of we're just looking to bring order to the universe. So at that point, I'm still wondering how The Last Titan is going to unearth a grand Titan conspiracy on that, which is Metzen's words, not mine. But ultimately, it is shaping up to be something that we need to pay attention to, especially in Midnight. And another thing that I think needs to be paid attention to in Midnight is the me and Rising Sun have brought this up, but what's the involvement of the Naru in this?
Yeah. Well, if you like go back to like the cosmological chart, you have like the 6 cosmic forces.
Yeah.
You have like death, you have chaos, which is like the Burning Legion. You have the void, which you talked a lot about, which are like the bad forces. But then you have the light, the Titans, and life. Well, we've gotten hints that the Titans aren't as benevolent as they seem. We've also seen the same thing with the light. So it's like we're going
For
to like
those who don't
dig
remember,
more.
like think of what Illidan did to Zira. That's kind of
Yeah.
what we're going for.
Yes, it's like all the forces are like acting to enact their will on the cosmos,
Mm-hmm.
and because like Azeroth has been like crafted by the Titans, they've been able to act as if they're the benevolent gods to everyone,
Mm-hmm.
but that's because they're also the ones who like write the history.
Yeah, my suspecting of what they're trying to do, and I could be 100% wrong on this, but I would still love it if they pull it off. Because the last time that I saw this story being told was in Babylon 5, way back in the 90s, and the way they did it was actually spot on. Is that, everything that we've seen up until this point is, the light had been fighting the void and I wonder if they've been fighting for so long that they just don't know any other way to do things than fight. And so then at that point, they pit their champions against each other, and whoever wins, wins. And so it would be very interesting to be able to see not just Azshara coming with a massive void forces, but we could also technically be seeing the alternate Draenor Yrel and basically the Lightsworn Brigade that destroyed the Magar orcs in that concept. We don't just have to see void bosses, because Dark Naru do exist. We could easily see Naru, but their purposes are much different than what we're primarily used to with the Naru.
So I have an idea, and this is like crazy speculation, but do you remember back in Worlds of Draenor, like Yrel made the comment saying like, whenever you need if you ever need our help, we will be there because of what we did for Draenor.
Right.
And then there's a question, well, why didn't you help us with the Legion? But what if the way they're going to bring that back is when the Void attacks Azeroth, Yrel and her army of light comes to like fight off the Void? So it's like you have like two villainous forces fighting each other.
Because she'll start to forcibly convert people like she did
Yeah.
on Draenor.
Exactly. It's like she's here to like fight off the void, which is great. But what if the light's even worse, or the light is just as bad?
Yeah, that's actually what I'm kind of wondering if they're kind of pointing out, is that all of these forces that are technically pulling Azeroth in so many different directions, what if Illidan had the right approach, which is just that you fend for yourself, basically. And I kind of like that, considering, just how much is at stake. But we won't know until we get there. Brinton, do we lose you? Do you know what we're talking about with Yadel?
I'm following along.
Okay, you unlock that Magar Orc scenario, right?
Okay. Yeah, I played Magar Orc for a very long time.
And I will say this, at least, if this does happen, I want Lightforged Garrosh Hellstream, because he is technically a model that is in that scenario, and I want to kill that motherfucker. I have no problem dropping a mofo on this. That bastard dies at my hand.
That would be a fun
That's
boss.
because Green Jesus took away my kill. Sorry, continue.
So,
Okay.
So is there also a version of Thrall on the alternate Draenor that can come back and steal your kill again?
Except he's not Green Jesus, he's Brown Jesus.
It's a Void Jesus.
There you go. He's Void Jesus with the tentacles coming out of his shoulders.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, so those are interesting teases for what we can expect with Midnight, as well as the War Within, that we might actually not have Xal'atath as the ending villain. And I'm going to be honest with you guys, I kind of didn't expect Xal'atath to last that long, because I figured she was probably, like, if she's the Herald of Dimensius, like they're saying she is, she gonna piss him off, and he gonna kill her, and it's gonna be satisfying. So
yeah, it's like she's the introduction to him, but the introduction villains never last like through the whole story.
Honestly,
like,
they could pull a Sanctum of Domination and make her a boss, and we technically don't kill her, but Dimensius does. I'd be okay with that.
Yeah, like she'll definitely be a raid boss at some point.
Yes,
but she's not going to be an expansion boss.
Yes, so at that point, I'm actually I'd be very keen on that. So that's the speculation for the future of the War Within. However, we again take it with a grain of salt, because all of this is theory crafting. We don't know what's in the writers' heads. We're presuming that we know. And
in general, we just don't know anything that we're talking about.
And here's the thing too, is like we haven't even mentioned a bunch of other stuff that's basically teasing at Xal'atath in things like the Season of Discovery. Believe it or not, Xal'atath is in the Season of Discovery in a way. And it actually kind of teases the origins of the Zone Halifal in the Season of Discovery. So I didn't even touch on that stuff. And yeah, there's tons of stuff for people to be able to go look into. But now we actually get to go into the Mythic Plus division of World of Warcraft, because they actually got their, I don't want to call it a seasonal affix, because it's not. But it's technically in that vein, because we learned a lot about what they are basically calling the Xal'atath buffs or affixes in Mythic Plus. So at that point, have you guys seen a bunch of the stuff that they've done with this?
No.
Sort of.
So
like
you remember how the seasonal affixes worked in Mythic Plus, right? So they were probably like plot associated.
Yeah, like in
So like the first one of
like
Shadowlands was tied to Denathrius and Nathria, and then eventually the second season was tied to Sanctum of Domination, stuff like that. So
this makes me realize how little I played in Shadowlands, because I forget completely what those affixes were.
Yeah, well, I'm not looking for like specific stuff on them, but basically what's going to happen is that we are now going to be getting Xalatath-based affixes that will be happening, I believe, starting at +10. So at that point,
or no, they're
choice.
+2.
Oh, do they start from +2 on?
Yeah.
Gosh,
So at +2, you get your first affix. There's like 4 of them. They keep changing it, so I'm like not really keeping up.
Right.
Then at +4, you get either tyrannical or fortified. You get Challenger's Peril at level 7, which just makes you lose more seconds when you die. And then at +10, you get both tyrannical and fortified. I thought they were doing something. Oh, and the Keystone 12, the Xalatath affix, which is just like completely replaced.
Yeah, so basically what's happening is we're losing a bunch of old affixes, getting a bunch of new ones, and then we get Xalatath's Bargain. And so Xalatath's Bargain has a number of things that can technically happen throughout the dungeon. So first of all, we have Xalatath. Now, granted, the thing I'm reading from is pre-testing. They actually tested these things out and ironed out all the details, but just to give you kind of a basic feel of how that's going to go. First of all, we have Xalatath's Bargain Ascendant. While in combat, Xalatath will rain down orbs of cosmic energy that attempt to empower nearby enemies, increasing their haste and movement speed. If players disrupt these orbs, they claim this effect for themselves. But they've also, I believe, amended this to where now if you take enough orbs, you get damage. So there's now basically a give and take. Is you have to be careful with this bargain if you want to be able to utilize it. Now we also have Xalatath's Bargain Frenzied, and this is for non-boss enemies become frenzied at 30% health. That's all non-boss enemies, all trash.
So I think what you have is out of date.
No, all of this is out of date as far as numbers. But yeah, they become frenzied at a certain amount of health, and it increases their haste and increases their damage, but it also does increase their damage taken. So basically saying, oh, now they can enrage, so you got to kill them quick, but that's okay. You can kill them quick. So then you get the Challenger's Peril, which you were mentioning, I think at +7, which directly affects the dungeon timer. This basically now makes it so that when you die, if you didn't know this, Brinton, if you die, it adds 5 seconds, according to old Mythic Plus limits. It adds 5 seconds to your timer.
So it looks like, it used to be like anytime you die, it's 5 seconds.
Yep.
Now, if you're below level 7, there's no time penalty. Mm-hmm. But if you're above level 7, it's 15 seconds, which is a lot more severe when you get to the higher levels.
Yes, and that here's the thing, is like before +7, death happens, but it's never something that truly affects the overall Mythic Plus run. This, however, does. And a lot of people are going to have to be a hell of a lot more careful.
Yeah, because now if you, like, your party wipes, that's a minute and 15 seconds, excluding, like, how much that slows you down.
Yes, and so that's definitely going to play into things. Oh, and it gets worse because starting at Keystone +12, I believe now they've amended this to +10, the new affix replaces Xalatath's Bargain affixes. At this level, Xalatath will revoke her bargains and empower dungeon creatures in health and damage. And I think the way that they've reworked this is that if you die enough times, they basically work this into it as a death penalty. If you have enough deaths, Xalatath just basically empowers the dungeon.
Well, I thought this was just like, instead of the other one where it's like you can get a benefit from if you do it right, now it's like you get no benefit. Everything's just going to kill you.
No, she revokes your benefits and she makes it harder. Is what they're saying.
Exactly. That's like her, the affix like she did at level 2 is gone.
Yep. And this actually is attached to the next one here, which is Xalatath's Guile. Is basically she revokes her bargains and increases health and damage of enemies and makes things a hell of a lot more hard on you.
Yeah, looks like it's 20% damage and health for all enemies in there.
Yes, I think they stuck with the 20%.
The Wellhead guide says 20%, so unless they changed it since that one was updated.
So, because the problem is that the ones that I'm reading, I think, are pre-test, and so at that point, not every number is accurate.
So the thing I linked to you is from yesterday, so...
Okay, so that's the confirmed numbers. So let's Let me grab
Yeah,
that.
confirm numbers until Blizzard changes their mind again.
or they do more testing and they realize, oh, it's still too easy. Where is it? Xalatath's bargain. Xalatath's bargain. Oh, here we go. Yes. So yeah, they've changed the numbers quite a bit. And in fact, Ascendant now has more movement speed than my stuff actually was saying. So and we got to consider that this actually stacks. So that's insane. Brinton, how do you feel about Xalatath coming into the Mythic Plus and causing all these shenanigans?
I feel it's going to make getting back into Mythic Plus super fun.
Mm-hmm.
Just
I'm actually excited.
Just super fair warning. The last time I did a Mythic Plus was Battle for Azeroth. So be easy on me, please.
So
well, here's the thing too, is that we
then.
also have the new Mythic Plus system where now a Mythic 0 is basically what you would have considered a +5.
Oh God. If you I can't believe I'm about to say this.
Is it +5 or is it +10, Rising Sun?
Well,
I think it's +5.
It's +10, but it's also like that's +10 from like earlier Dragonflight.
That's right.
But I feel like there's also like a lot of inflation. So like what Brenton might have done as a +10 back in BFA might have been like a +20 in early Dragonflight.
There you go. Yeah. So basically what they've done with it is, and I actually like how this turned out, is they basically made heroic as a difficulty for dungeons matter again, because now you can basically utilize that as a pre-Mythic 0, or that's what the difficulty is supposed to be, is like Mythic 0. You can prepare yourself for the mechanics that you're going to have to deal with, and then you can go in and
it's
deal
actually
with that.
Tough enough to be a challenge now. And like the Mythic +0 is like, you don't get the Mythic affixes, but everything else is tuned pretty high. So you can like learn the dungeon well.
Yep.
And then the affixes are a step on top of that with a bit more power for everything.
And what's even cooler about this, and I actually like the decision that they did with this, is I believe all of the dungeons that we're getting for the Season 1 Mythic Plus pool are leveling dungeons. They're not the end game dungeons just yet. And so when you're leveling and you're doing the heroic versions, like when you're leveling, when you're doing them, you will have a lot of access to these dungeons and you'll be able to learn them. But once you get into heroic, they're actually talking about adding the other previous expansion dungeons in this season into that heroic pool. So at that point, you can get used to those again. So for those who don't know what those are, the new dungeons are going to be Atakata, the City of Echoes, the City of Threads, the Stone Vault, and the Dawnbreaker. And the previous expansion dungeons that will be joining Season 1 will be Mists of Tir Nasaith. We can all cry a little bit later. The Necrotic Wake, Siege of Borealis, and Grim Batal. Grim Batal is a Cataclysm dungeon that is being revamped to be able to suit the Mythic Plus dungeon pool. And considering what they did with Throne of Tides, I'm actually excited about this.
I'm surprised you have 2 Shadowlands dungeons here.
I am a little bit too. More importantly, I'm surprised that they picked Mists of Tir Nasaith, considering that a lot of people tend to not like that one because of the path following at the beginning of the dungeon. So
it's also shorter, I think, so that might balance it out.
It technically is, but that's if you know where you're going. That's kind of the issue there. I've already had this discussion with a few people. I think it would have been better for them to do something like Halls of Atonement instead, where people know how that is pulled and people know how to do that dungeon, as opposed to people who are still trying to figure out what the arrows mean in Mists of Tir Nasaith. But thankfully for those who are worried about that, the Necrotic Wake isn't that hard. So at that point, if you get Mists, you can opt out if you want to, but you do have some other ones that are easier to be able to get through. Because we don't know just yet what the battle or what the War Within ones are going to provide.
Yeah, and we also don't know how hard they'll be tuned either.
No. And that's definitely something that we have to consider with this. But Yeah, so this is basically what they're going to be doing for the seasonal affixes from here on. They do have additional affixes that are going to be showing up in earlier keys. We went over those in a previous podcast, so you guys can go over that. It's basically saying that if you're, I can't even remember some of them, like if you have anybody who does arcane damage, they can tend to, if this affix is in place, you can ignore certain melee armor by 30% or whatever it is. And again, that's been changed because of testing.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy, like how many like complete revamps they've done of the affixes.
Yeah,
like they've
no
done
kidding.
2 or 3 this cycle.
It's definitely very interesting, and I'll be very interested to see what people think once they start with this, because not all of the systems have been moved properly into this. A lot of that's going into the war with them.
Yeah, and I think it is interesting though, like instead of like having 2 or 3 affixes, like each adding like a small mechanic, is like, no, we'll just give you one mechanic that's more complicated.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also like,
in reality, like that's how it was in Legion. And I like that. Is like you had the one mechanic that you really had to worry about. That was it.
And I also, it feels like when you got to the plus 10 in BFA and Shadowlands, like you had your seasonal affix, like that was the interesting one.
Mm-hmm.
So now they're like, we're going to get rid of all the non-interesting. We'll just give you like your one seasonal affix, sort of, even though it rotates.
Right.
But it's like, okay, here's your challenge. If you succeed, here's your buff, different variations on that. And then you can focus on that. And then all the others are just the numbers increase, which aren't that exciting.
Yeah.
But it still gives them something to like tune that, making like +4 or +7 more of a challenge.
Right. And to that, I'm kind of happy, because it's, to me, it's kind of breathing new life into Mythic Plus. I mean, by the time I actually got into Mythic Plus, one of my complaints with Shadowlands and even Dragonflight to an extent was, by the time I got into Mythic Plus, all the people that I normally group with in my guild, they were off doing +15s at that point, and I was stuck doing +2s and having to pug. And so at that point, I was just like, okay, well, obviously this is, not as, or the difficulty curve is very different here than what I'm used to. And the fact that that reels everything back in, it lets people practice in the heroic version and then lets them go into Mythic Plus and be able to gain the rewards from that. I'm totally on board with it. Because to me, that makes normal mean something. It makes heroic mean something. It makes Mythic 0 mean something again, as well as Mythic Plus. But that's me.
Yeah, I think they've made good changes with it.
Mm.
I don't know how much I'll play it, because I'm more into raids than Mythic Plus.
Right.
But I think this is just a good idea for the game as a whole. And when I do play it, I'm sure I'll enjoy it.
Mm-hmm. Really quick, just because you brought it up, have you seen some of the discourse that's been happening with a lot of the big raiding guilds over the story mode difficulty, especially since I guess originally it was going to be after the last wing of LFR had been put in. Now they're actually going to be putting it in with the first wing of LFR.
So, yeah, because isn't the story mode just like for the last 1 or 2 bosses?
It's the last boss. They did confirm it is just the last boss. It's basically meant to let everybody see the story and the cinematic that comes from that. You don't get to see any of the other content unless you do the other raid content. But the fact that it is releasing earlier, a lot of people suspect that it's just going to be, or at least the raiding guilds are going to utilize it as a means to be able to cheat the system a little bit and get lesser versions of the loot table for that boss. And I don't even think we've gotten confirmation that when you do the story mode, there will be a loot table.
Yeah, because I would expect here, like, if it is loot, it would be so insignificant not to matter to raiding guilds.
Right.
Because, like, I would assume if it drops something, it'd be below LFR. And so you can maybe, like, upload it to the LFR level, like, max that out, which that might help you as normal.
And a lot of people aren't even considering that, like, upgrade tracks and stuff like that. They're more worried that, like, it's gonna basically create a way for the raiding guilds to be able to gain some kind of advantage. And guys, when you're talking about advantages for things like Race to World First, these guilds have already figured that shit out. Trust me.
Yeah.
They've already figured it out. This one thing is not going to be the monkey wrench in the works.
unless like there's a trinket there that's like super good for its item level, when having like a max out LFR, like that tier would be useful, which hopefully they won't mess up
I
the
don't
tuning
think
that
so.
badly.
I think the biggest thing that they're doing, I know that they're adopting a lot of the Dragonflight model, which is like occasionally like the loot tables are a little bit more diverse in what they can give, but there was also always a chance that there would be a rarer drop, which would be like a weapon on a specific boss, and that would be like the evoker staff that everybody wants. And they're going to be doing something similar to that with War Within, but I don't think the final boss had anything that was like game breaking on its loot table.
Yeah, I think it's just like higher item level as a whole, so maybe that would get it up another tier. But even then, like if you're going after mythic like world first, you want like the heroic tier at the very least.
Right. So at that point, you like I hate to say this, but like the story mode, the RWF guilds are not going to farm that. Not unless they have some kind of like Rising Sun is saying. They're not going to farm that unless there's a tremendous advantage that comes from it. Most of the time they're going to be farming normal, and then they'll go into heroic, and they, and granted, by the way, if you've never seen a Race to World First, they are doing heroic raids in leveling gear. It is, I don't know how they do it, but they did it. Like my guild's always had a minimum item level, man, and they're going in and questing greens.
And killing faster than you would.
I remember doing the semi-hardcore rating, and it was, okay, you got to be this item level like day one, and if you're not, I guess you're not rating. And it's like, no. God,
but
like
they literally have number crunchers figuring out like the way that the Race to World First guilds do it is very intricate. It's very detail oriented. And it basically makes all of the people that I know in my guild that we like to make fun of, that have like spreadsheet underwear or whatever, they put them all to shame. Like the plan that they all have. So yeah, they're not going to utilize the story mode. The story mode is primarily just going to be more for the casual audience, I think. Sorry, I cut you off, Rising Sun.
No, I was going to say, now I want spreadsheet underwear because that sounds cool.
Well, I'll talk to some of my guildies and see if we can get you a pair. Because we have lots of people who do that stuff and frankly do it for a living. I know one of the ones in our guild, he's an actual accountant in real life. So he has spreadsheet underwear like all the time.
Okay, I have a story for you about my job, but I think I should do it after the podcast.
Okay, cool. Actually, this is going to be a little bit of an ADD moment, but I do have to kind of mention this because it is something that made me giggle with the pre-patch. Did you guys notice like that they added in a bunch of different settings, like specifically for if your character is obscured by a pillar or something like that? Did you see that they added arachnophobia settings?
Oh, yeah, I did.
Oh my gosh. I was actually laughing and yelling at Blizzard at the same time when I saw that officially announced.
Doesn't it like turn all the arachnids into crabs or something?
It turns them into lobsters.
Yeah, that's what it was.
It turns them into giant lobsters.
I was going to say, I turned it on and all of a sudden I was like, why is there so much more crustacean than normal?
Yes. And the reason I'm giggling is because giggling and angry is because when I was actually raiding in Wrath of the Lich King, because people remember at the launch they redid Naxxramas, and if people don't remember, there was an entire wing of Naxxramas dedicated to spiders, and then on top of that we had 2 dungeons that were based around spider people. And one of my guild masters, who was our best healer as a holy priest, was very, very arachnophobic.
Oh,
and
no.
I kid you not, we probably took like 10 years off of her life because all of the good gear that we needed, specifically like our hunter needed or we as tanks needed for Nax, we did on Kahet and Ajol Narub so many times. And that poor healer, she was a soldier, man. She soldiered through it and she did what we asked and did those dungeons. But even when we got to Myexna, do you guys know who Myexna is in Naxxramas? Myexna is a giant spider.
Oh, no.
Okay. So if you guys remember Hadronox from Ajol Narub,
Oh, yeah.
roughly that design, but early classic version of that design. So at that point, she literally had to do that fight backwards. Thankfully, she had a heal bot that would help her out with that stuff, but she had to turn her character around because she couldn't look at Myexna. She couldn't do it. She hated Myexna and would have horrible... She even told us she has horrible nightmares of when she did it in the classic days. And I just kind of looked at this and went, first of all, fuck you, Blizzard. Why didn't you add this in Wrath of the Lich King when you had actual spider people that was going to create problems for arachnophobic people? And then I was also laughing. I even texted that said Guildmaster because I'm still in close contact with her. And I'm like, hey, just so you know, World of Warcraft added arachnophobia settings. It's like, what the fuck does that mean? I'm like, well, it turns all the spiders into lobsters. She's like, well, that's cool. I'm not coming back. And no, I'm not doing your spider wing for you. I'm like, no, of course you're not. It's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's like it's a absurd idea, but it's also like, I think it makes sense.
It makes way more sense here because of the fact that we're going to be dealing not just with, 2 dungeons and a wing of a raid. We're going to be going into an entire zone. In fact, 2 zones will deal with Nerubians. So at that point, good on you. If this solves the problem, good on you. I don't care. I love the Nerubians, so I'm going to enjoy all the lore.
And I heard that it was like one developer, like over a weekend, was like, I have this idea, I'm going to go do it. And so I was like, oh, that's cool. Let's keep it.
Oh, one guy just basically created the arachnophobia mode. That's great.
Yeah, so it's like, it's also a problem because like I know people who have like issues with spiders and bugs, so like they might be able to deal with it from time to time, but like an expansion like with that is one of the like main types of creatures that can be harder on them. So now they get lobsters instead, which makes them want a lobster. Maybe I don't know.
Which like for me, that's silly, but that's just because like it's spider people. I know spider people don't exist, but like for all the people, like people don't realize this, but for all the people complaining that WoW is a fucking old game, it's been around for 20 years. Some of the monsters that get made in WoW can get pretty fucking frightening. And especially the Nerubians, if you didn't play like Warcraft 3, just going up and saying, oh, a giant spider human hybrid, oh god! Like that's still a freaky thing to look at. And that's not even going into some of the things that the Nerubians have created. Specifically, we brought up Hadronox before, the spider that's just so jagged and spiky that it actually even looks like he's got cobwebs on his legs. Then you have those creations. And I mean, even my wife will probably use the arachnophobia setting once she gets to Aj-Kahet, if she ever does.
Oh, I turned it on, like I already said.
Mm-hmm.
I am playing around with that.
I want to play with it just to see the lobsters.
Kind of, yeah. Like, I would love to see what they do with like the Crypt Lords and stuff like that, or like the Anubarak kind of characters. That are supposed to be like giant spider beetles. Do they still come out as lobsters, or do they come out as something else? Which again is just so funny because she dealt with all of the Cthulhian horrors because they eventually came back for Battle for Azeroth because they heard that there was going to be Lovecraft stuff, and they love Lovecraft.
But they don't like spiders.
I know, the irony is not lost on me. Yes. And they loved all of the face tentacles and everything. No, but as soon after that, they were just like, nah, we're done.
But they can't do spiders.
They couldn't do spiders. I laugh, but I'm also just like, you know what? Good on you, Blizz. You did something that maybe nobody was asking for, but probably was necessary for this expansion.
Yeah.
Because you didn't have to do that for the giant mantis people or the giant beetle people, but you probably had to do it for the giant spider people. So I'm totally on
And-
board with that. And that's so we've got one more thing to get into, and then we can get into a little bit of discussion, because this is actually a recent announcement. Drak fans, you can rejoice because you're getting other classes that you can make Drak for. Rejoice. You can finally do this. So for those who don't know, Drak are only allowed to be the Evoker class right now. And they're the only race that can be. But in a tweet from a Blizzard dev, they have officially confirmed that they have worked out in a future patch that Drak will get an assortment of other classes that you can create. They couldn't say all of them, but they did know that Warrior, Hunter, and Rogue were on the list. So you can create a Drak Warrior, a Drak Rogue, and a Drak Hunter. And if the Hunter pet is not dragon related, they have failed.
So I guess my question is, when do I get to make a Volpera Evoker?
God damn it. Because somebody will ask for that. That's all right. I've already seen a bunch of people going Drak Druids when. So.
No, that doesn't make sense. But the Volpera Evoker, that's not going to play.
But the Volpera does? Okay.
Yes.
That's good, because I've seen a bunch of people saying Volpera Druids need to happen, and all of their forms need to be cute and cuddly fox-like beings. And, no.
Okay, now I kind of want that too.
Of course you would. See, I'm old school in my viewpoint of the Druids. It's like, I don't want cute and cuddly animal forms. If you want to put cute and cuddly animal forms, make a skin. That's the best way to be able to do it. If you really need a bear form with puppy dog eyes, fine, do a skin. I don't need you to, like, justify in lore a gnome druid with big puppy dog eyes in the cat form, all right? Just make a skin and move on.
You give me all these ideas of things that I really want now, so thank you.
Good job.
Yes, I'm going to get told Blizzard to do this. Thank you for the idea, Drak.
All right, there you go. Now I expect that to be your next avatar. That's gonna be how it goes. Is you're gonna get a cute? We're gonna get a cute and cuddly cat form with puppy dog eyes.
Well, I need to have a sunrise or a sunset in the background.
There you go. Okay, yeah. So, Brinton, how do you feel that since you have a Drak how do you feel that you now can get other classes for it? Does it make you want to make another one that you could start at level 10?
I guess. Like, I'm pretty happy with my Evoker.
I'm interested. I might make a warrior just because I love the warrior class, but I like my evokers. So, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't want to go too, like, alt crazy.
Mm-hmm. Unlike
like,
everybody else who's
of...
going to be going super alt crazy in this expansion.
I mean, I have every class that's level 70 now, so I'm ready.
I just want to I just want to go at it easy.
Yeah.
I play my way.
You know what? And I can't blame you for that, considering that you will have to be doing, like, master's degree in the middle of all this. So
yeah,
in fact, your situation is one of the reasons I'm actually kind of looking forward to the story mode, because then at that point, like, you know, you and I and Rising Sun can just set up a day, go see the end of it, and give our thoughts. But that's primarily it. Like, if I had my way, I probably would be doing like normal raids at the very least. Unless they make like it'll probably be like a mythic only boss. I just don't see a point in going past normal.
Yeah, it's like you don't want to make that type of time commitment. So it's good that they have like the different modes. Like you can get a challenge at your level for it.
Mm-hmm. But really, like for me, raids are more like I just want to sit back and look at everything. So at that point, I'm interested in doing the encounters, but then I would probably take my lockout and just go wander the place and just look at the polish that the Anubar Palace gets. That's all I'm really interested in doing. So I could see why you would take it easy, Brinton. What about you, Rising Sun? Does that make you want to create a new Drak Rogue or Warrior or anything like that?
Not really, because I've already like leveled everything, and I have like classes spread across a lot of different races. So
Yeah. I used to. I actually, one of the things that's kind of funny about War Within is I might consolidate a little bit, because there are definitely races I just am not a fan of having anymore. So I might do a bunch of race changes at some point or another, but like I thought it might be fun at one point to have a Tauren, and I can't get past the whole I'm a cow aspect, but and so then at that point I just kind of look at that and go, well, we have an earthen race coming. Maybe I'll just change it over to an earthen and be done.
I mean, I plan to make my hunter an earthen once I've unlocked it.
Yeah, the earthen actually do look very interesting, so I'll probably mess around with a lot of those. But the perfect example here is like I'm a big fan of the Zandalari trolls, so at that point I don't really want regular trolls anymore. I'm a much bigger fan of Magar orcs than I am regular orcs, so I kind of just want to do that. As opposed, and also I just love the elves in Warcraft lore. So at that point, I want to create as many elves as I possibly can. People can get mad at me for it, but I just kind of don't care. Oh, this is actually another thing I completely forgot about that happened with the pre-patch. Since we all do mythics, how do we feel about the fact that where Mythic 0 used to get a weekly lockout, as of the War Within, it is going to be a 24-hour lockout.
Say that one more time.
So when you did a Mythic 0 in Legion and Battle for Azeroth, you would be, much like a raid, you would be tied to that dungeon. So you'd still be able to do it, but you couldn't get any loot from it.
Oh, yes.
And so now you will have a 24-hour lockout. So you can do that Mythic dungeon, like Mythic Mists of Tyr and a Scythe, and then go back the next day and still have another chance at loot.
Okay, that's cool. I like that a lot.
Now, granted, the Mythic Plus chests will still work the way that they do, but I think that's actually a really great idea to get people into Mythic Plus, because then they can do the Mythic Zeros and get all the gear that they need to fill out those gaps, and then go into Mythic Plus. So I think that's actually a great idea. Rising Sun, how do you feel about that? Are you going to start farming Mythic 0?
Probably not, but it gives you an option. And I feel like Mythic 0 isn't good enough gear to like where it needs to be gated like that.
Mm-hmm. And this actually does bring up an interesting question that we haven't really addressed here. How is Delves going to change? Like, Rising Sun, you're a raider. So at that point, like, a lot of your time is spent in raids. I am more of a casual one, but I like raid content as well as dungeon content. And Brinton, you're kind of on the same vein. How does Delves change that? Like, do you find yourself wanting to try and find a balance, or are you more excited for the Delves than anything else?
I think I haven't like played the Delves myself, so I don't know what they're like, but I feel like they might be like a side thing to like help me gear up early on in the raid, but I probably like won't be pushing it to max it out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you could technically, now granted, there's a bunch of difficulties that can be done, but the highest difficulty is basically supposed to be equivalent to the Legion Mage Tower, but if you can do it, your reward would be the equivalent of heroic raid gear. So as a raider, you might actually have to do this, Rising Sun. Because
So is it that it gives heroic raid gear for beating it, or is it another option for heroic raid gear in your weekly chest?
I think it's both. It can give the equivalent item level of heroic raid gear, and also the upgrade track for heroic raid gear, from what I understand. So this might actually be another way raiders can gear up to be able to get past walls in Anubar Palace.
Yeah, I'm trying to like see, does it like have an item level chart like the others?
It does, but I can't remember on Wowhead where it is.
Yeah, because it goes up to like
everything's
tiers,
moving
like,
over into War Within, so now it's not like everything is where we need it to be.
Yeah, it looks like tier 8 is like the max that drops better gear. There's also apparently 13th level, but
Yeah,
that
13th
doesn't
level, 12th and 13th level are supposed to be the Mage Tower type difficulties.
Okay, yeah, but those like don't drop better gear than the 8. It looks like.
At least for right now.
According, yeah, it doesn't like give an item level table, so
Yeah. So I mean, does that make you like? Does that make you change your kind of viewpoint on delves?
Not really, because like it's the same with Mythic Plus. I don't go, or I typically don't like force myself to do Mythic Plus, even though it can get better gear. Like if I have time, I might do it, but I just like stick to raids as my main thing. If I have time for the others, great. But if not, I don't worry about it.
See, and that's the thing that I kind of like with it is that, you know, if you technically wanted to be absolute best in slot for like, you know, hardcore extent Rising Sun, you would be doing all of this because there probably would be a plus 20 trinket that would be better than anything you could get in heroic raids until you get that mythic trinket. And so there's a lot of ways for people to be able to get that gear. Or you could take your approach, which is just you're doing the content that you are interested in doing, and you're still it could technically be your best in slot, but it also can just get the job done until you can get that other upgrade.
Yeah, and I'm probably not going to do Mythic grade, so like more heroic grade gear, that might be nice.
Right.
But I'm also like not going to push myself to do content I don't enjoy. That's not how I play. That's not how my raid group expects me to play.
Yeah, which frankly, yeah, I mean, for those who can do it, good on you. For me, it just wasn't fun when I did it when my guild was hardcore at the time, which is way back in Kata Missipend area. So now we just kind of overall take a casual approach. But like doing all of that, it just is so complicated and so much simming and numbers are involved. So now I'm just happy that you have multiple venues to be able to look at gear that is still going to be able to help you. It may not help you the way you want, but it can at least get you to that trinket, that weapon that you want.
Yeah, and maybe it's like you do it for a couple of weeks to like get some extra gear. At that point after that, it's not really that useful, which I'm more okay with that, especially like early on in the season is like I want to do stuff, but like later on like, okay, I just want to do the raids and that's it.
Right. So yeah, I don't really think that there can be too much talked about with the delves because, you know, those who have done the beta have done some of them, but not all of them have been available. But I personally am looking forward to the delves just because it gives another means of being able to get gear and also another means of storytelling. And I'm very interested to see like how much effort is going into the delves as opposed to dungeons and raids and whatnot. So with that being said, let's actually get into the discussion that we have tonight, which is very appropriate with the War Within, because a listener actually of previous episodes that we have done asked this. You know, we're prepping for an expansion. Do you guys have any rituals or specific things that you do in game to be able to prepare for an expansion? Let me give an example to some people that might be intrigued by what I'm saying. For example, one of the things that I've known a lot of people in my guild to do is the night before a expansion goes live, which now doesn't make any sense because like global launches are like 3:00 Pacific time. But what they originally used to do was they would go and fill their quest log with daily quests, because daily quests don't give gold if you're not at max level, or at least they don't give as much. They give experience. So they would fill their quest log with dailies from that current expansion and go complete them, and then basically wait until the next expansion launches and then go turn them in for a nice little XP boost. That's some of the things that I've seen happen, or other people will kind of basically prep up their professions to, if they have like a bunch of crafters, they will get a bunch of gathering professions so that they can make some money while they are leveling their characters. Are there any specific rituals or traditions that you guys do to prep for an expansion?
Oh, not directly, but it seems like every expansion, there's something that makes it so I cannot play for like a week around it. Like going out of town for business, getting sick.
So you're basically
Um,
saying your work is paying attention to when games release?
yeah, like so I have a trip like on September 3rd for like a week. Like I'm gonna be like out of town and like out my laptop, but I'll like be busy with work stuff probably.
Yeah.
And, like for Dragonflight, like I got sick that week, like the week it came out.
Guess that's how it
So
goes.
Shadowlands had like worked out well because like there was like a COVID outbreak at my work. So like, yeah, just take the next week off, everyone.
See, what's funny for me is like in the past when I have done little traditions for expansions, the only one that ever worked out was Mists of Pandaria. And that's because I went out of my way to make sure that that was going to work, and I just leveled that whole day, and I was way too happy that first day because I had gotten through Jade Forest and a good portion of Valley of the Four Winds in one day and was super happy about that. But usually my tradition would be like the side content because I remember when Burning Crusade launched, and so you had everybody in one zone leveling in Hellfire Peninsula, killing
Oh no.
Hellboars. Not fun. So my tradition was that I went and leveled a Blood Elf because nobody was doing that. Everybody didn't want to do that. They instead wanted to level their current characters. And so that became my tradition. It's like I would do, so for Wrath of the Lich King, I leveled a Death Knight that night. For Cataclysm, I leveled my Worgen, who ultimately became my Druid tank. Mists of Pandaria, I did that, but I did the Pandaren starting zone, etc., etc. And I've always enjoyed that tradition. For this one, though, I'm probably just going to jump right in. Because by the time I'm actually able to play it on that day, enough people will have either passed me by like 2 zones or will already be leveled from what people are telling me. Because apparently the XP is so lowered that when people were leveled by like zone 3 in Dragonflight, some people are saying that the way the XP works now, people will be leveled by zone 2. The end of zone 2, you will be 80.
Oh well, that's fast.
So
yeah,
there you go. Brinton, do you have any traditions that you wanna mention?
Sure. Yeah. Mine isn't anything like super radical or remarkable.
Mm-hmm.
I'm super gay, so I like having my leveling transmog all ready to go on my body, so that way I can go.
You know what? As a transmog whore,
in style. Go ahead.
I don't know if you can actually hear that, but
no,
I'm clapping in front of the mic. I'm clapping for you. I'm giving you a round of applause.
Oh, thank you. I also like to clean up my bags, get rid of things that I really don't need. Just taking up unnecessary space and causing havoc.
Right.
And just doing that for, I guess since we're talking about World of Warcraft here, doing that for all like my main and all my alts, and just get everybody to a point where like, did I do everything that did I do and accomplish everything that I wanted in the last, well, I guess I've only been back into Warcraft for a little under a year, in the last couple of months. And just log out in a rested area so I can keep building up a little more rested experience.
Yeah, I always put mine in like the inn in like in this particular one, I put mine in the inn in Valdrakken that is like right next to the big temple or the big tower. So at that point, like I can just bounce right to the portal and get to Queston.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's pretty much my rituals. I don't super worry about gear. Even in Final Fantasy XIV, I'm not super worried about like gear at that point because I know I'm just going to be getting leveling gear, and then I'm back on the best in slot shenanigans
Yeah,
for the
honestly,
next
when I
couple of
leveled
years.
in most expansions, Dragonflight included, I wasn't getting upgrades because again, I was doing a lot of like epic stuff, so I wasn't getting upgrades until probably halfway into Azure Span on my tank.
It's kind of I've noticed, regardless of like what game I'm playing, once you get halfway to the max level is when the leveling gear actually starts being a quote
Yeah,
unquote upgrade.
I don't ever like I don't think I've ever taken like the first rewards in the first zone unless it's like my fifth alt that maybe hasn't gotten a whole lot of focus.
Mm-hmm.
And so at that point, like, and I like that because I don't have to worry about numbers and I can just sit back and listen to the story. Especially now that WoW is so voice acting intensive. I can just sit back and listen to the struggles that the characters are going through, and I tend to like it that way.
But that's it. That's my
Yep.
answer. I'm focusing on not spending money to level boost and just
Oh yeah.
and just get my alts to 70, get the things that I want to get before the 22nd. I think that's when early access starts.
Yes. Yeah, 4 days before. So
Okay, yeah, 22nd.
So that's a Friday, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah, no, it's Thursday. So yeah.
No, it's a Friday.
22nd's Thursday. I thought it was 23rd when the early release was.
It could be. I might be getting the days wrong because I don't do the early access. So I guess I get to be the big nerd because this time around, I don't do like the stuff of like going and collecting 25 dailies because frankly, some of the quests that I have in my quest log that haven't been done yet are so obscure that I don't want to go and get them again because I don't want to have to find that random orc in the middle of nowhere that I had trouble finding the first time when I get around to those quests. So I don't do that stuff. But what I do is, much like how Brinton said it, I plot my character. First of all, I pick the characters in the order that I want to be able to play because I actually do pay attention to what the class changes are in an expansion because at the beginning of an expansion, it is a gameplay changer. And so at that point, where I might have liked a particular caster in Dragonflight, I might like a different caster in the War Within. So I pick my classes. And in this particular case, I'm picking 4 to match my warband. Because I like the warband screen better than the classic stuff, even though, some of those are still pretty cool. What I'm doing this time around, however, is I'm doing a massive profession overhaul. Because I tend to be that guy, at least for the first 2 alts, that goes and gets nothing but herbalism and mining in WoW, just so that I could sell them and be able to get some gold as I'm leveling. But this time around, I've actually decided, you know what, we're going to do things way different, and I'm not going to go into too much depth on it, but basically making all my DPSers gatherers, because that's what I'm more focused on doing, is when I'm actually out gathering, I get sick and tired of pulling shit, and I'd rather just kill it quick. And on some tanks, you can't really do that. Especially in the War Within beta, where they nerf tank damage again! So
yeah, I never level as a tank. Even if I'm that is a tank, I'll level as a DPS spec.
Yes. Well, and here's the thing. I don't like running multiple specs on characters anymore. Specifically because of all of the space that the extra sets create in bag space. And I'm so tired of that. So I basically decided, you know what, with all these hero specs, I am probably going to be an alt machine in World of Warcraft, in War Within, because I'm going to want to try everything. This is very much like the artifacts from Legion. I want to try everything and see how that changes the gameplay for them. So what I basically said is if you're DPS, you get gathering professions. If you are a tank, you are basically going to be getting skinning, because if I'm going to do any kind of gathering on a tank, it's going to be where I can grab a bunch of shit and just AoE it down, and I'm just doing skinning on those. Totally not, because skinning isn't actually the worthwhile profession that can actually earn a lot of money. And then I'm also going to be doing enchanting on them because I have a feeling with tanks, I'm going to be doing a lot of dungeons, which means I'm going to get a lot of greens and a lot of blues that I can disenchant. And in case people don't know this, enchanting materials sell very well. Can people tell that I'm meticulous with money when it comes to World of Warcraft? Yes! Because sometimes there's some expensive shit that my wife wants to buy.
Now it makes sense.
Well,
now it all makes sense, doesn't it?
Well, I've always been spoiled by other people who have been playing the game since vanilla, where I'll be like, oh, I don't have this. Well, I guess I'll work towards it. And then within seconds.
In the guild that we're in, we could do that because a lot of those people are still there. But it's just like,
right.
But I also want to learn all the cool lessons that you gave me. And so I started doing it.
Well, yeah, that's the problem. I have been ridiculously spoiled, like, for as long as I've been playing this game.
Yeah.
I even remember, like, because my ex-husband essentially worked 3 12s on the weekend and then just had like the entire week to play the game. So I would get home from work, they would like use their alts to help me catch my main up, which I still hate. That was the thing to this day. And then the second I hit max level and finished a campaign, everybody already had purchased for me, okay, here's some gear, let's go hit heroics. And I'm just like, okay,
yeah,
cool. So I never really learned that like I learned how to do the transition of, okay, I completed like the main scenario quest in Final Fantasy XIV. This is how you transition into the end game content. I never learned how to do that with WoW,
and I can actually do that.
And yeah, so this is like, in some regards, I'm gonna have some huge learning curves in like the coming weeks. So that's why I've already said it once, and I'm gonna say it again. Please go easy on me. I really, really want, and I know you're not gonna give me shit, Adam. But this is me just like pleading, like, please go easy on me because I do want to learn and I do want my prowess of playing Final Fantasy XIV to translate over to like, oh, Brinton really knows how to play Warcraft. I want to be at that point. So just
why I love my guild.
I learn fast. Like, I learn fast. Just give me benefit of the doubt.
I'm in a guild with a bunch of people that have spreadsheet underwear that know everything, all of the ins and outs about the classes. So if I have a question, I know who I can go to. And the best part about it is the whole premise of the guild is, as long as you're teachable, as long as you're willing to learn, and they will help you out. Especially when it comes to, because one thing you'll also hear when we're leveling is that there is the right way, there's the wrong way, and then there's the relic way, which is basically the guild's way. What was that?
It's like your way. You figure it out. It works for you. Everyone else will be very confused.
It's how my guild does the dungeon run kind of thing. And you know what? That's fine. Because usually when they find the ins and outs of those dungeons or those raids, then I take that in somewhere else and everybody goes, we never thought of that. Funniest thing. So, but I have a feeling a lot of the time you're just going to be more entertained in dungeons with me, Brinton, because I'm just going to be pulling mobs and singing to myself. That's the thing that my guildies love that I do, is that it's not even that I get bored. I'm not bored. I'm singing or doing something stupid, like quoting a limerick, and I have the mic on, and I'm just thrashing there and going, never made it as one man. Or I start singing Disney songs or musicals or whatever. It's
speaking of dungeon runs.
Look, it's just like I don't know any other way to explain it other than it's just different parts of your brain working. And so it's just like, this is what I do to focus and get the job done.
It's like how my brain just like plays random songs in my head when I'm doing math stuff at work.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know why that song came up. It just is.
Exactly. This is why I'm going to find it very entertaining when eventually we do dungeons together or do raid story mode, is that all the quirks can just start coming out, and it's great. And it's entertaining. And there you go. But sorry, Brinton, I interrupted you.
No, I was gonna say, in regards to running dungeons and all that, I know I didn't fully mention this before. I am more than happy to provide healing. I really do enjoy healing. But I am a healer that will let you die if you think that you're gonna stand in the bad and take advantage of me.
Well,
Okay,
that is a guild rule. Don't stand in the fire. So, although the thing I find absolutely funny about this expansion is, have either of you read up on the on some of the Demon Hunter notes with the hero specs?
No.
Not really.
So the Aldraki Reaver actually has an interesting mechanic in one of its talents where you can get healing from fire damage. And
Wait,
I
dumb.
get what they mean, guys. I get what they mean. It's like all the fell flame that's coming off of you. But the second I read that tooltip, I'm just like, huh. And I could just, I just saw my Demon Hunter in my mind's eye, just going like, man, my shoulder's really bugging me. Oh, look, a pool of lava. That'll help.
Yeah, I'm going through trying. I thought there was one where it's like you like take less fire damage and you could like convert all other damage you take to like some of it being fire.
Yes. Yeah. I can't remember the one you're.
I thought it was the other one.
Oh, that might be
Reaver.
Fellscarred. Yeah, that might be Fellscarred where they do that, because a lot of that stuff is based in like fell fire damage.
Yeah, so it's like 5% of all non-fire damage you take is fire, and then you take 10% less fire damage.
Yep. So I just find it funny that you mentioned that, Brinton, because like when it comes to my Demon Hunter, I have a feeling I'll have an ADD moment one of these times. It's like, I wonder if I stand in the fire if I actually will get healed.
So I'll share a quick story just so that we were staying on topic.
Go ahead.
In one of the Shadowbringers, in one of the raid tiers, I kid you not, one of my ex-husband's friends straight up said, I know that I can literally stand wherever I want because Brinton's going to heal my stupid. Because I am, not to toot my own horn, for the data center in Final Fantasy XIV that I'm on, during the Shadowbringers raid tier, I was in the top 3 of best healers for the entire data center.
Nice.
I had no idea, honestly, still to this day, how I did it, but I was the third best, like literally the third best healer in the entire data center.
Mm-hmm.
I am really good at that role. As soon as that was said, I let that motherfucker die faster than a fly being smacked up against a wall.
Which
I was just like,
is what my guild would have done with him.
Just like straight up, oh really? Okay.
But more importantly, like, we would have been the assholes that basically said, I don't know how you died. I mean, I was healing you just fine. Like, and probably manufacture like false healing logs saying, oh yeah, we did flash of heal this entire time. Yeah, we're assholes like that. If you do stupid shit like that and it's avoidable and you don't own up to it, yeah, we don't handle it.
Oh yeah, no, I was a blunt, petty bitch. I was just like, Brinton, why didn't you heal me? Why did you stand in the bad?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
No,
I've dealt with players like that. They're not fun.
So what
yeah,
do you do?
Go ahead, sorry.
Right, what do you do if the healer's one who stands in the fire?
Like if I'm the one healing and I stand in the fire?
Yeah.
I guess I'm fucked.
Hey, some healers get way too into their add-ons to be able to notice where they're standing. I feel I've had that moment myself.
No, like that's why I like healing. I can take care of myself if I want to be dumb.
Yeah, like I still remember when, because when I used to heal in Cataclysm and Wrath, like I would get into that focus. And so at that point, like as soon as I saw the shadow zone underneath my butt, I'm just like, fuck, I'm gonna die, because I'm just so in the zone of just doing the whack-a-mole that is healing, that I'm just like, well, I mean, I could try and move, but then I don't get the chain heal off, and then somebody dies.
That's why I
So-
like my paladin healer. Hit divine shield. I have 10 seconds where I can ignore everything but healing.
See, and shamans
Yeah,
don't have
so-
that.
So I just wanted to throw that out there. So
Uh-huh.
your choice is me healing on my dragon or healing on my paladin.
Actually-
you just tell me which one you want.
I'm
I'll
glad that
do
you
it.
did that, because that's actually going to be one of the other things that I'm doing for War Within is I want to mess around with a lot of the healing classes, but one of the reasons I'm good on one healing class and not the rest is because I've just got that muscle memory down. I'm thoroughly convinced that's why, because I know
Yeah.
shaman healing so well that nothing else makes sense to me. So I've actually decided, like, if I'm going to play other healing specs, I'm going to level them, and I'm going to level them in nothing but dungeons, because I'm going to build that muscle memory like I did with my shaman and see if that helps, because I literally hate every other healing class in any MMO or anything like that, because the second that I play the healing, I'm just like, it's not like my shaman, fuck this! And I immediately walk away, but I don't want to do that this time. I want to actually give other healing classes a shot, because I do actually think that, for example, like some of the stuff that Preservation of Ogres are going to get, and even Resto Druids, and I hate Resto Druid, like trying to heal on that, I want to give it a shot and just see how it goes. And I'm at least going to try this with like one healing class and see if it helps. But there you go.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I always the only healing I've ever done in WoW is Mistweaver and Holy Paladin, and I enjoyed both, but I think I would rather. But I've started to lean more towards Paladin as I've gotten back into the game. I just don't enjoy Monk as much as I used to.
well, that's good, because out of the like the top 3 classes that people are the most excited to play in War Within, Paladin is one of them for all 3 specs.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Paladin, like, they had a lot of changes that at least look good in theory. I haven't played them yet, but like I like what they've done with it, and that's why I like played at the end of last expansion
Yeah.
for Holy.
So we unfortunately are actually past like the 2.5 hour mark at this point, so we probably better wrap things up. But really quick, had you, so as kind of like a wrap up for this, what is going to be your first main that you level in War Within? Or so like your main character that you're gonna level first.
Who would you like to answer first?
Go ahead, since you've already answered, Brinton.
Hunter.
And you've already picked your hero spec?
Yep. I think I'm gonna go for pack leader.
All right, so that's the Beast Mastery side, right? Okay.
That is correct.
And Rising Sun, what about you?
Probably Paladin, because I definitely want to raid with it. I will raid as Holy, but I'll probably level as Ret, because leveling as a healer sounds painful.
I've heard nothing but horror stories on the beta.
Yeah, and
we're back
the
to
Herald-
classic days.
Yeah, I'm just not going to bother. I can play Red. I don't like it that much, but it's fine. I need to probably figure out like what the changes actually did to it.
Have you figured out the hero spec that you want to raid as, at least?
Yeah, I really like the Herald of the Sun spec, just because like the focus on Eternal Flame and all the stuff with that. Like that's what I really liked back in MOP and WAD. So like the way that they're kind of bringing it back, that should be good.
Yep. So for myself, I'm going to be going with for my main, which if we level together, Brinton, which I don't know how that's going to go because of your school, I'll probably take my tank out, and he will be a Guardian of Elune druid, because having Mangles mixed with arcane damage just sounds like nothing but fun for me.
Yeah, that sounds like a good druid.
It really is, and actually, it makes me kind of sad because druids have 4 specs, but they don't get 3 variations. And so, unfortunately, oh, you poor kitty druids, you don't get Guardian of Elune. You instead get the Resto and the Guardian versions. So that's how you get a cute and cuddly bear with arcane damage. So I'm looking forward to that. But my boomkin is probably going to be Keeper of the Grove, just because I like the idea of having a bunch of little treants just constantly casting wrath machine guns as turrets while I do that. I like that idea. And those are the primarily like the big ones, because like if I'm gonna have to get raid content, then it's gonna be on the boomkin so that I can, be cameraman if I need to be. But when I'm out questing with you guys or doing dungeons, I'd rather be on my bear. I'm more comfortable on my bear. On my burr. It's just too bad because I really wanted to get that Legion fell bear, and I still haven't gotten it yet. Sorry, I cut you off.
Oh, no, I was going to say, in the times that you've run dungeons and I've trailed along, you really know how to tank on a druid. So you're not kidding.
I used to know a lot of the tanks, but then the monk came along and that just kind of wrecked my momentum. So, because I was there was a point where I really knew paladins and DKs and druids and warriors, but then they threw in the monks, then they threw in the demon hunters, and I still need to learn those. But yeah, I've done tanking since BC, so I know that role inside and out, and I feel comfortable in it. I just don't want to raid in it anymore. I'm sick and tired of looking at the boss's COD piece. All right, I've already done it way too many times.
Oh my god,
that's pretty much the only view you get, Brinton. It's all you get. But let's go ahead and wrap things up for the evening. And actually, I'm just going to give a quick update for you guys. The next MMO talk that we might get on this probably won't be for a while, because I actually think it would be an awesome thing to be able to dissect the War Within story, because we will be able to get into it and be able to give our thoughts. And so, yeah, it might be a while, because I would love to be able to hear you guys' thoughts, as well as you guys in the comment section, on what you thought of the overall War Within storyline. So it might be a while, unless there's like major news or anything like that. But in the meantime, if people want to reach out and talk to, for example, Rising Sun on his opinions on paladins, how do they do that for you, Rising Sun?
Well, they can mail me a letter. I will get that eventually.
Awesome.
They can call my cell phone, as it seems like everyone has been doing lately.
All right.
They could show up at my house and bring me pizza, because that would be good.
Well, the pizza must flow for an expansion.
Exactly. Like, I'll need pizza, so show up, bring pizza, we'll play well and watch anime, and it'll be good.
There you go. That's a great day.
Exactly. Yeah, I don't have Twitter anymore because I deleted that, and it's been so long, so I can't get it back, so that's probably a good thing.
Yeah, probably.
So, of course, you can find me on Twitch, where I stream things when I have time and motivation, which hopefully will be more often. Don't plan on streaming well, though. Maybe I will. Who knows?
Who knows?
Or you can stop by Discord and throw things at me there, because that's fun, and archive of our own, because I have fan fictions there, but no, I will not be linking those.
Or you could throw things at the Shadow Blazer, so that the Shadow Blazer then takes Rising Sun and throws him into a volcano. Because
exactly.
That's always entertaining.
Exactly. Throw stuff at the Shadow Blazer. He will enjoy it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, he's got to have something to do, because he can't, he's already kind of exhausted the whole concept of getting kids off his lawn. So, way it goes. Brinton Valli, how do people reach out to you?
They don't.
All right, that's cool, because I don't want to actually have to deal with hunter opinions.
You're gonna have to, because you and I both know.
Oh no,
everything.
I mean general opinions. I stopped dealing with hunter opinions back in Wrath, which is like, either you're a good hunter or you're not.
It feels like everybody and their dog, pun intended, is a hunter. So
yeah, there you go.
Not just. You all know to go talk to Adam, and I'll answer your questions in due time.
And you guys
I sound so exasperated.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you've already got school coming too, so that doesn't help the situation.
Yeah, I can't believe it's just a few more weeks.
Right. And for me, you guys are obviously already on the YouTube channel or on my podcast RSS feed, so you guys can check those out and check out some of the other content that we do. For example, some of the discussions that we've had on Dawntrail, as well as leading up into the War Within, and check all that out. Or if you're on YouTube, you could check out the Questing with Drak, where I have been going through the Dragonflight storyline and giving my personal thoughts. And yes, that will be done despite the War Within. It just means that if I'm going to cover the War Within, it'll probably happen later. So don't worry too much about that. Or if you're on the RSS feed, you can follow us on Amazon Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Player.fm, as well as Spotify. And that's going to go ahead and do it for us. So when we come back for more MMO talk, it will probably be to completely dissect the War Within, spoilers intended, which I look forward to with you guys, because I would love to be able to take apart the first part of the World Soul Saga and figure out if this is going to be worthwhile, or if this is going to be a problem, or talk about highlights and stuff like that. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. But in the meantime, we will see you guys for the next GNRO Roundtable Discussion. Until then, take care, my friends.